y'all, we're going to go ahead and get started because we have, as is usual for a CC day, we have a tight schedule. There's a lot to squeeze in. Thank you guys so much for being here and making this a priority. I'm going to just pray, and then I'm going to tell you what is going to happen to you today. And then we'll get started. So let's pray. Father, thank you for bringing us to the end of the semester. We pray right now for all of our students upstairs who are blue booking. We pray that you would give them peace and joy and focus. We pray that this would be a celebration of everything that they've done and learned over this semester. And we pray for every conversation that's had in this room today. I pray that it would be empowering, encouraging, informative. Give us as leadership the exactly right words to say. And as we come and go out of this room, I pray that your presence would be known and felt. You have called us to this task of educating our children, and we trust you to empower us to do it. So we lay it all before you, Lord Jesus, and it's in your name that we pray. Amen. All righty. Yeah, y'all coming in. Lindy's here. Yay, coming in. So, this is where everything will be all morning. I am going to launch us off while the challenge directors are launching their students onto Blue Books. And then they are going to rotate one by one to come speak about their levels. So we'll start with A and go straight through to 4. I will be sitting in the classes as each director comes. So if you have kids up there, don't worry. They're still going to have an adult there. But that means that there will be a tag teaming thing that needs to happen between each one. So there will be a 4 to 5 minute break. Run to the bathroom, make a phone call, grab another cup of coffee, whatever you need to do, in that little break between each level. This is our first ever P3, so welcome. P3 stands for Parent Program Preview. And really our goal in this was, when we come back in January, we're going to be asking you guys to start registering, applying for next year. And as the challenge directors and I talked about, families that have come and gone and students that we've seen be successful in challenge or not be as successful in challenge, what makes the difference? And we thought about, is it student academic ability? No, it's really not. We've seen all levels of academic ability succeed in challenge. That really has nothing to do with it. Student investment and motivation, that's important. But really, the most important factor that we have seen for success in challenge is parent involvement and investment. Now, that involvement investment level looks different in challenge A than it does in challenge 4, but the principle remains the same. And so we wanted to have a way to equip parents better, rather than, and we'll do, orientation in the summer and all those things, but sometimes that feels like we're trying to equip you in the middle of the roller coaster ride. You know what I mean? Like, you're already strapped in, you're already moving really fast. And so this is a moment for us to pause in the middle of the year before applications start for next year. Some of you may have questions about, is the next challenge level a good fit for my student? What are we doing? What should I be preparing for? What can I do in the spring to look forward to next year and whatever challenge program is coming next? So this is our attempt to do that. We are going to ask you to sign in the back, just so that we know, because it's not going to be the same director here all the time, so that we have a record of the day, who all was here for the whole day. Everybody will need a catalog. Who needs a catalog? Okay. This will be your guide for the day. This is what we're going to be referencing throughout the day as we chat. And then at any time, let us know if you have questions about anything. So that is the day. Everybody good? Alrighty, so go ahead and open up in your catalog that you just got to page 5. And I wish that I could camp here for like an hour, but alas, there's never enough time. This is CC's mission statement, vision statement, and we believe statements. Read these, meditate on these, super helpful. Our whole goal is to know God and to make Him known, ourselves and our children. And how can we equip our children to do that? And that when I feel discouraged and overwhelmed in the middle of a homeschool day or in the middle of a homeschool year, stepping back and reminding myself of that is super important. So I wanted to start there. But also, in the we believe statements, you'll notice an emphasis on parents, children, and family. Number 2, God trusts parents with their children, and so should we. Number 4, education is the responsibility of the family with support from fellow believers. So again, our burden and our desire to equip you as parents is why we're here today. So we're reflecting our we believe statements and wanting to take a pause and just talk with you guys about what's coming down the pike, answer what questions you have. The challenge program is based so much on participation and classroom participation. For those of you who've done foundations, you can come to a foundations day and go home and never talk about it again. And while that's not awesome, we would want you to continue to engage with the material. You're still going to have fun, and you're still going to learn a lot. That's okay. Essentials, I would say, is like 50-50. You can come to class and not do any of the work. You're going to miss out on a lot, but you'll also gain a lot. Could still work. We really want you to be working with us, but if not, it's okay. Challenge is way more on the balance of those classroom, those community days are based around participation and discussion. So if you're not engaging with the material during the week, community day gets really hard. And so, again, knowing that the success of that comes from you guys as parents. Here we are. So, if you will flip the page to page 6, who has been to a CC practicum before? Either the old 3-day ones or, oh, yay! Old 3-day ones or new 1 day. This is what we go over every time. The 3 canons, or I'm sorry, the classical trivium and the 3 stages, grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. So in grammar, we're memorizing things, we're naming things. I like to think of it as like stocking a kitchen. And we know that our kids' kitchens are going to get stocked whether we're intentional about it or not. It's just whether it's going to be mismatched Tupperware and Twinkies or really good quality ingredients and cooking supplies. So our goal in foundations and in those early years is to stock their kitchens with really high quality things. All the good steaks and veggies and all the good stainless steel cookware and all that stuff. We're giving them the tools. Then when they get to the dialectic stage, which is essentials, challenge A-B, they're going to start learning to use those. What happens when we heat up the meat in the pan in this way versus that way? And what happens if we add too much baking soda to our bread recipe or whatever? Why does this happen? How do these things interact with each other? All of those kind of questions. And then when we get to the rhetoric stage in the upper challenge levels, they know what their tools are. They know how to use them, and they start, I think of it as like a chef in a fine dining restaurant. They can create their own recipes that are fantastic, and then they can go talk to them about it, talk to people about it. You know how a chef can come to the table and be like, well, the crispiness of this element plays off the creaminess of this element, and the heat that you get from this then, balances the sweet and this, and they can talk about it in this really beautiful way that they've also created this beautiful thing. That's where we're headed. So that, by the way, is just the way I think about it. There's a million other ways to think about the stages of classical education, but I like food, so that happens. So that page right there, page 6, is going to talk to you about those. If you will now turn to page 40, this is a chart that hopefully you've seen before. that is the scope and sequence of the whole program. So this is probably not where the challenge directors are going to live today, but I wanted us to see this and be reminded of this. And you'll see that I've put up here on our board for a reminder the theme of each level that's from this page. Challenge A, ownership. Challenge B, discipline. Challenge 1, freedom, and so on. Those are the themes and goals that we're working toward in each of those challenge levels. These page numbers that are up here are what you'll get to with the challenge directors when they come down. The program resource, the second later pages are the program resource pages, and then the earlier pages are the, yes, get it done. The program descriptions and things that you'll be.
I'm not kidding anymore.
Don't make me take those home. Don't make me take those home. Y'all eat that. So that is why we're here. It's the scope of CC in the teeniest nutshell you've ever heard, and kind of where we're going for the day. And it's 9:14. So my time with you is almost over, and I'm going to go grab Anica out of Challenge A. But before I do that, does anybody have any other questions about today or the plan or what we're doing?
When are the challenge classes finished today? Like, what
I wondered that too
what
with
is-
the test if it went the same 3:45.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless your director has told you differently, it'll be till 3:45. I think some of the upper levels are only doing a half day, but those parents should already know that. But the lower levels, it'll be the whole day. Because they're blue booking, and then they're also eating fun food, and
I saw a lot of stuff going on.
it's
I was
just,
gonna say we brought board games and stuff too.
there's all sorts of fun happening up there today. They can pretend they're stressed about blue book, but it's really fun. So yes, whole day, unless your upper level director has told you differently. I think challenge 3 is done at lunch. I am not in charge of that, so that's why I always say, contact your director, because I'm just in charge of the little people. Okay, any other questions for the day? Yeah, I'm so glad y'all could all be there. Be here. Thank you so much.
Hey, good morning.
We're Jones.
I see a couple of current Challenge A parents. Yay! Your kids are doing great upstairs.
No tears yet?
Nope, no tears yet.
Oh,
Nope, everybody's doing fantastic. They loved when I made them say, I got this. They were like, no. I was like, no, you got this. You got this. They're up there doing blue book right now. Future Challenge A parents. Fantastic. All right. Hi. Good morning. So, I guess I'll start. My name is Anica Williams. I am the current Challenge A director, and it is an absolute delight to me to serve in that capacity. I love it. I could not have even imagined how much I would love it. And so, likewise, I'm really delighted to be here right now talking to you guys about what Challenge A looks like. Anica Williams, and y'all, my brain is still in blue book mode. So you had to give me like half a second. And also, I need a podium, like right here. Challenge 8 is this really beautiful transition where you get to move from this opportunity that you've had as your kids have grown up to hold their hands, right, and be right there with them. And if you were within classical conversations, you're right there in class with them, pointing to maps and singing songs. I love you so much. Singing songs and doing hand motions or working on keyword outlines and quality adjectives, right? You're right there with them. And then when we transition into the challenge years, it's a little different. You're partnering with your director and you hand your sweet babies off to that director for the whole day, right? And your students then have to learn to focus their own attention and try to piece out of a whole day's worth of information. What am I supposed to write down in my brain book? What am I supposed to take notes on? What do I have to be responsible for, right? There's this shifting responsibility. And it's delicate and it's scary sometimes, and it is wonderful. Do we fall on our faces and not know how to do it? Absolutely. And do we pick each other right back up and say, come on, sweetie, we got this? Right? Yes, we do. And so Challenge A is this really precious place that I love because I've homeschooled for 15 years, but my own kids, but then I tutored way before that. And my favorite thing to do is to come along somebody that's struggling or doesn't understand how something's working, say it in a different way, and help them to get it, and help them to, more than that, to know you can. You can do it. You can. No matter where you're at, we can make it work, and you can gain more skills, because that's the point, right? The point is not for anybody to walk, any student to walk out of Challenge A and be a master at Challenge A. That's not the point. The point is to grow in character and to gain more knowledge and skills than they had when they walked in the front door, right? Everybody. So, the theme of Challenge A, appropriately so, is attention leads to ownership. And so as your kids learn to guide their own attention, they begin to realize this responsibility for their own education and their studying habits. And they've got to come to class with that information and be able to share it, right? And so it's important, and it's a stepping stone. It's just the very beginning of this stepping stone. Challenge A goes a little bit further, a little bit deeper, and then when we get to Challenge 1, it's high school years, right? And they can do it. They've got it. The thing that I love the most about our particular campus is that I feel like the directors that we have in place are very well equipped to help each of you walk through these stages and help your kiddos where they're at and build character, and more than anything, recognize that God is with us and He equips us and He loves us, and every one of us has a different purpose. And y'all, I'm completely off script at this point, so every one of us has a purpose and it's different, and so there are going to be different strengths and weaknesses that come into class, but we all fit together to build each other up, right? And I see that in the classroom. It's beautiful. So I mentioned that I've homeschooled for 15 years. My oldest kiddo is 20. And I've graduated a couple out already. And I have homeschooled over multiple curricula, venues, different arenas of all different kinds. And I would like to submit to you that, in my opinion, Classical Conversations is one of the most thoroughly equipping programs that I have worked under and facilitated. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the formation of CC, the challenge years came first, and then they structured the foundations and essentials years to support and uphold, right? To be the firm foundation for those challenge years. So if your student has spent any time in foundations or essentials, they already have been exposed, learned, or even mastered a lot of the material that's covered. The benefit to that is that you already know part of it. So you're learning how to take notes, and you're learning it deeper, but it's not the first time you've ever seen it, right? And so that's a huge asset to your kiddos that are in foundations and essentials. It's a huge asset to you guys. It makes everything a little bit easier. So, okay, what do we actually cover? In the challenge, if you have your guides with you, on page 54, it goes through that a little bit. In challenge, we call the subjects strands because we want to reference back to this idea that God has created everything and nothing stands alone. It is all interwoven like a tapestry, and so each of these subjects is called strands because they're woven together, right? Science can't function without math. Just doesn't work. And if you don't know how to write a paper, whatever you discovered in science doesn't really matter because nobody's ever going to hear it, right? They work together. And so for math in Challenge A, you use your own curriculum, but in class, class, we have discussions about mathematical terms and concepts. For grammar, we're doing Latin. And this is one of those really beautiful places where we take the same curriculum and we go over it 3 times. Challenge A, we go through a part of it. Challenge B, you go through that same part, but a little faster, and you go a little further. Challenge 1, same thing, a little faster, a little further. We're going to finish that first book. So in Challenge A, we're really focusing on vocabulary and how we put things together, right? In science, I love this strand because I feel like it's the most beautiful stepping stone if you are in Foundations and Essentials, because we take the presentation skills that we learn in Foundations, we take the IEW writing skills that we've learned in Essentials, we combine those things, and for the first 10 weeks, your students get to research things that they love, right? I give them headings, and then they get to go find something that they like under that heading to research, and then report back to the class on it. Super fun. It fits their skill level right where they're at, and it's building up because after we do that 10 weeks, then we have what's called our capstone event for Challenge A, and that is Science Fair. Science Fair is a big deal. But I will walk you through, hold your hands step by step by step, and I hold their hands step by step. And what is produced in the end is this amazing product that we have had high school teachers from public schools come in and say, man, this tops what my kids have even done. This could have gone to competition. This is amazing. And so they're learning about the scientific method. They're learning about how to present, to test those ideas and present them. And once we're done with that, everybody's ready to take a breather. And that last 10 weeks we study anatomy. And so parts of the body and the pieces, the names and all those things. Reasoning, the first semester we talk about analogies and we begin to compare things in the world, right? We're comparing not only things, but we're thinking about literary devices and we're comparing those things. And second semester is fallacy detective, and we begin to think about how we argue. You're going to love that. Challenge A moms, we ain't got there. You're going to love it. Because then that's about halfway through the second semester is when you're going to go, why did I teach my kid logic? Now they're arguing with me really well. I don't know if I like this, right? But it's a fun strand. It's a little bit of a breather strand. We do skits and we play games and we learn a lot of fun things, but it's not as heavy, right? Science fair is it's hard work. It's heavy work. But this analogy strand is a little easier and it's a lot of fun. For exposition, for writing, we're going to take Newbery Award-winning novels, read them, and then begin to analyze the fact that choices have consequences, right? Every single choice has a consequence. If you put deodorant on this morning, it has a consequence. If you didn't, it has a different consequence, right? If you got here on time, it has a consequence. If you did your assignment on time, it has, right? Consequences aren't negative. There's positive, and it's just the effect, cause and effect. And so we begin to take this rich literature and look at the things, the choices that people have made in the literature and evaluate. Well, should they have done that? Should they have not done that? And even better, what are reasons that they should or should not have? And we have to look at both sides, right? Because it helps them to see somebody else's perspective. Because in this world, everybody's not going to agree with our opinion. And we have to be able to see another person's viewpoint and recognize it as valid and be respectful to that, right? And so we get this really great opportunity to use these books to evaluate the pros and cons of various choices, and then we get to learn how to build a persuasive essay. This is a different technique that's used than IEW. It's real different, and it's okay. We give you the building blocks. Honestly, the very first paper that you write is almost a template. It almost is as simple as, so-and-so did this because of that, and here are the 3 reasons why. So-and-so did that for this reason, so-and-so did that for this reason, so-and-so did that for this reason. Oh, we just wrote a first paper. I mean, it's real simple. But then we very quickly And this is another place where you have the same curriculum used for 3 years in a row. And so challenge B, you've got the same things. You're going to go a little farther, a little faster. Challenge 1, a little farther, a little faster. We're going to complete the book that year, right? For history or debate, as it's called in challenge, for challenge A, we're doing cartography. This is something that gives people a little hiccup sometimes because your students are learning to draw and label the entire world. And geographical features, capitals, you get to tailor exactly how much of that you want them to retain. But it's a beautiful opportunity for them to learn attention to detail. The point is not mastery of every jot and tittle, but the point is to train their brain to attend to detail. And everybody can do it. You don't have to be an artist. Everybody can do it. We can draw blob maps. That's what Miss Anica does. I draw blob maps on the board. They're not pretty or perfect, but it can give you the idea, right? But it's a great underlayment for what comes in Challenge B and the rest of the challenge years as we begin to study wars, political lines. Geography has an impact on how we draw those political lines and conflicts and things, and so this gives them a great foundation for future studies and understanding how the dynamic of the shape of the world impacts political dynamics as well, right? Guess what? I made it through all 6 trades. Let me tell you the best part. It's none of that. The best part is you don't have to do it. The best part is your kids are going to come into that classroom and they're going to forge friendships that are going to be important to them, maybe for the rest of their educational careers, right? It is possible that the challenge students that enter into Challenge A together go throughout the entire middle school, high school journey together, studying together, playing together, learning together, helping each other where they have weaknesses and strengths, right? Sharing those strengths with each other. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And even beyond that, us mamas and daddies get to have some friendships. Because likewise, we're working alongside of each other too, right? Teaching our kids. We on the band page, I mean, I have no idea what the answer is to exercise 14, number 5 in Latin. Somebody help me, I don't understand. And we're there as a community to help each other out, right? What did you guys do for your trifold board for science fair? I'm thinking about doing this, but is it crazy? Is that gonna work? I don't know, right? We can talk to each other and be a support group for each other. As the Challenge A director, I'm here this year. I'm planning to be here next year. I've already submitted that, and maybe for a few more years because I just love it so much. It is an honor to me to get to walk you guys through this really important transition year. I could talk about it forever, but I have people to attend to upstairs also. And I think maybe some of you guys have questions. Are there questions about the strands or anything that I've talked about so far? I put my email here. If you email me with questions, put Challenge A in the subject. Thank you. Most of you have my cell phone number, and there's always bands. I'm always happy to answer questions and help you guys be equipped for the things that God's called you to do. You're doing a great job. I'm going to scoot upstairs and relieve Valerie so that Will can come down here and talk to you guys about Challenge B. And in your guide, I think the pages are listed. Yeah, page 94 is your resources page. This page shows the books that we read and the various curriculum materials that you need for Challenge A.
Are all of those on 94 required, or like, because I know, like, I was looking online, like, what the book list is for Challenge A, like, some of them, like, for example, I saw, like, the Saxton textbook, but Saxton isn't necessarily, like, the
It's not required, no.
Right. So I was wanting to know like, which ones are not required, or like, or are debatable, or whatever.
Sure. Do you have your guide open to that page?
Yeah.
I'll just
or
walk you through it real quick. So for the Henley, the purple and the blue books are required. The white answer key is not the one I recommend. I'll give you.
94.
Yeah. No.
96.
I'm sorry.
Second
That's
page.
why I'm not following. Okay, got it.
Do y'all use the Henley check? Is that what y'all typically use? That's what we use at home.
What?
The Henley
Answer
answer
key?
guide.
I don't, honestly. There are better answer guides out there.
No, not Henley.
The Challenge A
What-
workbook.
It's the one that we pay for. It was like $11 to get A
The
and B.
whole
Yes.
thing.
And I think I sent it to you. What is it
Yes,
called?
it's called
First,
I'm not gonna be able to pull it up out of my brain right now.
no, I can't either. I lost it, but it's been very helpful.
Henley in a hurry.
Yes. Thank you. No brain, no babies.
Mr. Kosky gets a sticker. That's what happens in my class. Everybody gets a sticker.
That's what we use. That's what we
It's
use.
really good.
Use.
Yeah.
It's the only
It gives
way I do
if there's any quirky things about any of the exercises in there, it'll give you the reasons why. So I'm gonna flip back to 94 so we can start at the beginning. Sorry, Lindy. So none of the first things are required. Obviously, the Challenge A guide is not required. Wait, no, sorry, we're in Challenge A. My bad. I was thinking foundations. It looks
And
like
y'all
the
give us that.
I give you that. That's part of your tuition payment. I actually give that to you. Yep.
Well, the
Yes.
nature sketch journal.
The Nature Sketch Journal, I do request to be purchased. Analogies, Fallacy Detective, and the Cartography book are all required.
Which one's the first one?
Exploring the World Through Cartography, bottom left corner. Okay, so there are 4 things on that page. On the following page, the blue and purple books in the Latin are required. And then the Henley in a Hurry answer key is recommended.
Can we go back to the bottom of 94?
I don't have any of that.
Logic stuff.
Yeah, it's not required.
We don't use any of it.
So the math map, I know that they're coming out with us doing math map in class, but it's not required for at home. The Latin A workspace is recommended, but not required.
Super helpful.
Yes,
Yeah,
it has the assignments laid out week by week for your and day by day, even within the week for your student.
And they can use that for A, B, and 1. They'll
Yes,
just do like
that's true. The Lost Tools of Writing Level 1 set is required. And then all of the readers are required. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Carry On, Mr. Bowditch, The Magician's Nephew, so on and so forth. The rest, all those books on page 97. And then that's all.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be this. As long as it's an unabridged of the same book, it doesn't necessarily have to be this book. So if you're
Correct.
And I found all of mine for like $3 to $5 on the thrift books.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that if you don't know about that, it's a super.
And often there are Challenge A parents that are moving into Challenge B, and their youngest kid is moving up that will sell their things off. So
Do you know the work athletes tools and stuff?
it's not fun.
And I bought the Henley in a Hurry. It was like $7 to buy the A, $7 for the B. I paid like $15 and got A and B. So that's something that I think that I don't remember if I gave that to you or not, but I did purchase it, and I do not mind sharing that out. But that's been super helpful. I just printed it and put it in a binder. And for my family, like for Jones, I would just give him the Challenge A, and I would give him like the first 6 weeks, and then I would give him the next little bit and do it that way. Whereas Challenge 1, I kind of just threw it at him and was like, sort it. I mean, I did.
You're talking about
It was-
Henley in a Hurry?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we've through her or some, we've got a lot of resources that they share at the beginning of the year to print off from FAN that are all super helpful.
Yeah, if you're a go-getter and you like to be equipped early, I would recommend that you reach out to me before you start printing stuff at home. Because I have a lot of resources that are very specific and tailored to Challenge A that sometimes are just more beneficial than the 15. You know what I mean? It's like, this one works really well with what we do, and there's 15 others that could take its place, but this is just one, you know? So.
Is there a lot of printing at home that's required?
The only thing, like your LTW workbook.
Okay, so we moved in the middle of this semester, and we didn't have a printer for a while. And so I had the files from Band, and you can pull up Band on your computer. So that's what I did for a lot of, I pulled it up on my laptop for a lot of the year.
Yeah, the LTW workbook, there are pieces and parts that either need to be printed or reproduced by your student on paper, which is totally, I mean, when we build an any chart, it's literally like, you know, A, N, I, and 3 columns, right? You can reproduce that on a piece of paper. You don't have to have the printed format or whatever.
It is super nice though.
It is. I have a printable workbook that has all of the stories and all of the papers that we do, all the pages already like collated for you in order. And so that's helpful for some students and parents. But it certainly doesn't have to be done that way. So there's that. There's some maps that
Research papers each week too, but that was not
can be
much.
printed, right? Research papers can be printed every week.
And the maps, I think you told us that one thing that was super helpful was to get the parchment paper, like the ones you could just pull out for tracing those maps. And for me, everybody's going to be different, but when your map, it's a really, really nice cartography book that I would always make a copy of it on my printer, and then they could trace off of that because it was hard to kind of trace over that hump from the binding. So, and I think Anica told us all of those tips, but those were things that were really helpful for us, is just to have the already pre-pulled, I think I've got it at Costco, where they can just pull out the parchment paper, put it down, and
And
trace.
the document for how to do flashcards that Anica has is very
Anica has all of the goodies, so
Yeah,
you don't
she
need to
really
stress
does.
any of it.
I researched the entire summer to try to find the things that were actually helpful to y'all.
And it's very organized, so you won't be. It's been a great year for us. Watching the development of your child go from being very dependent on you to kind of like the whole ownership thing. Watching that is very, very cool, and kind of stepping back. And I mean, my kid was like one who wanted me to sit and do everything with him, and he like took off, kind of because he came off. He's just done a really good job, and it's just really cool to watch that transition of. How
It
they
is
do.
really
And
amazing
it's a great class.
to see them come in one way and to leave in this whole other way. And it's not always academic. Like I have students in my class that came in just very quiet and very to themselves, and I've watched them blossom, right, with the friendships that are being formed in the class and the shared experiences. It's character development, and it's beautiful. It's not by any stretch of the means all about academics. So,
And
anyway.
then sometimes reeling them back in.
Yeah, and there's some reeling back in too.
Get them out of their shell and then be like, well, not that
Not
far.
that far. Let's pull it a little bit back in. All right, I do have to get back upstairs to your precious kiddos. Thank you guys for your time. You guys can get snacks, and Mr. Trautman will be here soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For y'all that don't know me, I'm Will Trautman. I'm the Challenge B director here at the Mount Sinai campus. I've been involved with Challenge B here for 4 years now, and so Challenge B, I guess the thoughts that I've had, I'm just going to kind of like I don't know what others have said so far, but my goal today is to just give you a sense of a little bit of what life is like in my class. Okay, and for those of y'all that have had your kids in my class, if there's a second here at the end or something, I'm welcome for you to chime in and say something. So I made a couple of notes that I thought would. I'm going to focus mostly on talking about kind of how I see Challenge B and the purpose of it. You can go into the details of the guide, and that doesn't, or of the calendar, and that doesn't really, right? That's not my purpose for here now. I want to focus on kind of core skills of what I see as the purpose of Challenge B, and specifically how I view it, right? Because, I mean, I'm there in the classroom running it and directing it. Challenge B can look, and all the challenge levels can look very differently, right? So I have a couple of key things that I want to see happen in the students every year when they come in, and to take away, and not just the students, but their families, their parents. I want to see things happen, hopefully to see, progress, and even if things are great, to see improvement, to see like, okay, well, this is where we are, but what can we do beyond this? Okay, so these are the notes that I made. First, I know that it's the Challenge A theme of ownership, but I see that as a Challenge B theme for how I run class too, because they're still growing. I've seen a few students who come in and who are like, I own this, I got this. I see a lot of them that are still kind of like, they're doing great, but they come in and they're like, I'm still kind of figuring out how I really own this for myself. And honestly, the boys still are not, by the Challenge B level, are still not owning it for themselves. And that's my son included, he's in the classes here. And some of them do, but it seems like, and that people have said that, I guess like sociologists or whatever have said that girls can mature earlier than boys. And I kind of have seen that somewhat in my classes. So taking ownership for work, seeing work as something that God has given to them in a positive way. I try to reinforce that throughout the year. So when I come into class, I'm not seeing skills as kind of like Latin proficiency of X, math level this and whatever. I'm not. It's more about life skills, right? Because we've got a mixture in the class, and some are going to go on to do something in college, and some are going to go on and graduate high school and then not doing any education after that. And that's great, because we need to educate to everyone, right? To everyone. So I see also all of those things as base level life skills, right? We need people to, in order to, what I tell them is I want you to be responsible and learn to be a good citizen, right? Learn to be a good citizen, learn to be a responsible Christian in how you think about your faith, taking ownership for your faith too. That's another one that I talk to them about is, they're in their teenage years, all of them at this point are in their teenage years, and they need to really be thinking about their faith for themselves and taking ownership in it. And some of the Challenge B curriculum does that for them. Like when we read Defeating Darwinism, we talk about evolution and creation, and they start to think about some of those things for themselves. I've had students ask questions like, how do I know the Bible is true? And I love when they do that. Some of the students, it can be a little shaky for them, kind of like, oh, are we allowed to ask that? But what I do is I take those questions and I send them home, and I say, I tell the parents, I'm like, your kids are asking these questions and you need to be talking about these at home, because now is the perfect time to do that, rather than waiting for something bad, to happen where they're having a crisis that you didn't know about. So ownership in their faith, seeing God as the author of our work, right? It can be a struggle when you're in those years of thinking that these assignments and all these things are just kind of like a pain on my life, right? Versus an opportunity to, what I tell them is God is using these things daily to transform you into the person He wants you to be. And you have the opportunity to accept that and to use it, or to not, right? And to let the opportunity be missed. So then the theme, obviously, of Challenge B and discipline. But I like to talk with them about how, right, what is the meaning of discipline, right? Commonly as a child, you think about discipline more in the sense of correction, but I talk about the roots of the concepts of disciple and discipleship that go into the real true concept of discipline and self-discipline. And so I want them to have a positive, grace-filled outlook on their life and their future, and in a daily sense of kind of like, I have the opportunity to do these things. Is it hard? Yes. Are there times that I'm going to be stuck and frustrated? Yes. But God's going to use those opportunities no matter how well I succeed at it or not. He's going to use those to grow me and change me into this kind of person that He wants me to be, and to see that as the goal, rather than seeing kind of like some kind of outcome on a score, on a test score, right? That's not any kind of outcome that I'm looking for. I talk to them often. We were just talking this morning again about excellence versus perfection. So I also try to push, because I get students on the other end who are starting to tend towards perfectionism, and I am a master at that, and I have to beat it to death. We have to beat that to death, because we can become students who are so consumed with being perfect on things that we don't have grace for ourselves or for those around us, right? That it's a cruel, hard world where you have to be perfect. And no, we don't do that. And in my class specifically, I talk about that over and over again. But I view that as an opportunity to give them a little bit of stress. I bring my coffee mug in every time, and they're kind of like, oh, Mr. Trautman, this is so tough, right? Logic and all these things are so tough. You need some stress on your life in order to transform you into that person. If you avoid all stressful moments, all challenges, all difficulties, then they're going to be kind of the weaker people that our culture kind of makes fun of now. And that's not, we want our children to be resilient, right? We want them to, so I see them at the point where they're ready to start building this resilience, to start viewing themselves as, here soon I'm going to start becoming a young man or woman, and I need to be resilient in my daily life. How I see the world around me, how I think about my faith. I need to be resilient in that. I need to be resilient in seeing problems and not knowing what to do with it at the front, but saying, okay, I can do this. I know this, and I know this, and I can put these things together. And maybe I don't have a perfect answer, but I can do something, right? Rather than nothing, because there's a tendency in our culture to crumble in the face of any kind of difficulty or challenge. And our kids need to be able to rise above that. So I see those things as kind of the core major outcomes. And I haven't talked at all about any of the technical subjects. And I emphasize that to them. And then I think I start to see over these last couple of years, the students say, okay, this is bigger. This is more about me and God, and this is bigger than me, knowing my noun declensions. This is bigger than me knowing the square of opposition, and all kinds of things like that. So, let's see. I also want them to work on, and this is more of a challenge thing, to work on discussing ideas and developing opinions. They've been in a listening phase for a long time, and at this point, so one of the things that we do in Challenge B is we start discussing, and there is this book that's the American Experience book, where we read figures in American history, and we talk about some of the changes that have happened throughout American history. We talk about slavery. We talk about women's rights. We talk about those are things. We talk Susan B. Anthony, Harriet Tubman. We cover these figures. Robert E. Lee, and we talk about what are the good things that they did, what are the bad things they did, and how can we assess those in light of who we are and the culture we live in. And instead of being people who kind of throw out every figure who ever did anything bad with the bathwater, saying, what can we take away from that that's good? What can we recognize that are things that we shouldn't repeat? And how do we consider our place in the midst of American history? That's a difficult thing to do. And so it takes weeks and weeks of sitting through that, but then eventually what you have is a student who is in Challenge 1 who's ready to stand up and start doing the debate work. Some people see the debate stuff as kind of like, because it's not a normal public school type of topic. Some schools have debate club now, which is great, but I think debate specifically is that concept of learning to stand up and come up with your own opinions, think on your feet, stand up to a little bit of stress and pressure, and be able to present in the midst of that. And it's hard. It takes practice. And it's not about, once again, it's not about perfection. It's about excellence and just doing the best that you can. And some students are great at it, some students aren't so great, and that's fine. But that's one of the things that I work on with them, is just starting into that with discussing the ideas. Okay, what do you think about this idea? We just discussed recently whether women should be able to serve in combat, because we read about a figure in Molly Pitcher who did, which some say she was a mythical figure. It's interesting to read for y'all, but whoever this person was, she served during the War for Independence alongside men on the battle lines. She started out by helping her husband and went beyond that. So, and there are other things about that too. We read about Clara Barton and the Red Cross. And so as we are discussing these things, the students are starting to kind of have to think for themselves. I prod them on, what do you think about this? Well, I don't know. And then we get weeks of that, and then eventually they start to work through it and be able to produce ideas for themselves and learn to discuss that. So let's see. Working as a team is another thing that comes out in Challenge B that maybe isn't so much of a Challenge A thing. We do mock trial. So Amy Gilmer has been my mock trial helper many times, and it's a great exercise. It takes a whole semester, and the students have to learn to work as a team. And typically, it doesn't always go well, and it's not the purpose that it's perfect, right? It's not about winning the trial. The exercise is about giving opportunities to practice these things. They build arguments, which is also part of our Challenge B activities. They discuss ideas with themselves. What is the concept of, they learn about the justice system and how does a criminal trial work and who is the prosecution, how do they build proof, they have the burden of proof on them, and what does that mean? And they have to discuss all these types of things, and they start to put, it's kind of like a capstone activity that they put a lot of the things they've learned in the other strands come back into the mock trial exercise. So it is one, though, that forces them, I pair them up because we argue both sides of the trial, and so you have prosecution and defense people, and you have witnesses and the questioning attorneys that are working together to practice their roles and those kinds of things. So it sounds tough, it is tough, but we work on it for a full semester, and I've seen a lot of success in the students that come in and, I'm not so sure about this, but then they work on it and they put their effort into it and it comes out well. And I've seen them all shine in different ways through it. So, another thing that I work on that is not really represented in the Challenge B information is presentation skills. And I work on that through in the first semester we do astronomy papers, and it's our research strand. And we study the history of astronomy, so there's history that's involved in it, there's some science that's involved in it. There's kind of like, we do a little bit of an informal timelining where we see kind of how world events affected, why was there this almost, 1,000-year gap between the improvement in advancements in astronomy. And, we talk about those kinds of things that happen in world history. And each week as they bring up a paper to present, I talk to them. I'm like, okay, yes, I know you're reading this paper and you want it to be well written, but I also want you to think about, how does your voice sound to the class? Are you quiet? Are you monotone? How is your body language? Are you stiff as a board? Are you making awkward motions? And so we talk about the art of, in some ways, a science. I give them a rubric of these are the types of things you want to look for and practice in your public presenting. And for each of them, then I assess them through the year in saying, okay, you started out with more of a monotone voice, and now you're having some bit of modulation, and it sounds pleasing to the ear, and the students are reacting well to it. Or some have trouble with eye contact. We go through all those techniques, and I tell them, you probably don't realize this, but public presentation is very heavily connected to theater and drama, actually. And so if you go and listen to people who do theater or drama, then you can learn a lot about how to be as simply a good public presenter. So we do those, and I do that kind of throughout the year, focus on their presentation skills, because I see it build their confidence. They can get up in front of people and really shine, and whether they're talking about any of the different strands of topics that we talk about, or they're just talking about themselves and their own faith, or things that they like to do. And so I see that as a big one, because it affects kind of who they are as a person. So often they're like, I don't know that I can get up to talk in front of people, and it's kind of like a core belief about themselves. And I find that as I kind of help them in small ways to improve that, then I see their self-confidence grow and their public speaking ability grow. Yes?
I just want to add to that. My son Mason was in Will's class 2 years ago, and every week I'd ask him how it went. He'd talk about his presentation. Mr. Trautman said I did this. Mr. Trautman said I was moving too much. I had my hands in my pocket. But every week he tried to improve. And I told him, I was like, that's so important, because he's kept on doing that.
Yeah.
But if you write an amazing paper and you're reading it and you're up there fiddling around or moving, people are watching you fiddle. They're not listening to what the words that you really put time into. So the fact that they're like, oh, they kind of correct themselves, it really helped me a lot.
I do want to pause before I talk about kind of the other aspects of the course, which are readily available in here or in the Challenge B guide. If you want to look at a Challenge B guide, there are lots of myself, but other Challenge B parents around who can show you information in it. Are there any questions about things that I've said so far?
I have
Yes.
a question now. How much outside of this day efforts are there, especially in regard to that mock trial or any other activity?
Yes, with mock trial, we have generally one extra meeting a week, but that's in the spring semester. We've done those on Zoom, so we've done those virtually, and then we've also done them, and several of them as we get closer to the event. We do, like I have a full trial rehearsal at my house the week before the trial, things like that, and we try to do several of those. And so yes, I mean it's most of the spring semester we have one extra meeting a week for that. So, we often will do that during the daytime, but it really just depends on the class's schedule. I get a parent to come help out and be my mock trial parent or mock trial mom to help me with those kinds of things, because I'm often at the office and not able to do those extra things. So I'd say also, but besides mock trial, it's a normal, like what I see, it takes up their school week for things. My kids on Thursdays go to other activities all day long. It's kind of their fine arts day, have piano and karate and things like that. And so they don't get to do as much school on Thursdays, and my son is still, and other kids that I know too who are in the class and have been through the class, they do similar kind of schedules, and they're still able to get the work done. They're not like working 7 days a week on it. It's work and it's hard, but they do well.
As a side note, what kind of engineer are you?
I'm an electrical, computer, software.
I just well, I wasn't even. I'll just be real honest. I have Lola, and we came to your class, and you literally, like, I left convinced. I was like, all right, we can do this. I was not going to do it. But it's funny because I'm very sciencey in a different direction. But whatever I don't even remember what all you said, but I just remember leaving that class being like, you changed my mind. So.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm hoping, because you guys have one of your kids in Challenge A that's going to move up, that you're still going to do it next year?
Yes, I'm doing it next year.
Okay, because I've got a son, I've got Jones, who's very, engineer-minded and loves all that, and I'm hoping that's going to be really good.
We've already talked about Joshua moving up, and he's like, it's gonna be so fun to see Joshua and his dad, because they're like both the same person, but different ages.
Well, Anica has done a fantastic job, and my son has thrived in that class. But I am very excited to see, because he gets me being a woman. I'm excited to see the dynamic of him having a male teaching him that's very like-minded as far as the sciences and numbers and logic. I remember you convincing me that logic was a great thing, because I was like, oh, God, I do not want to do this. And you said something, and I don't remember what it was. So I apologize for that, but being like,
That's a great segue.
yes.
So that's actually how I wanted to finish the time. I believe heavily in our logic work because it builds good citizens. It builds people who don't argue in the Facebook comments. 100%. 100%. It builds people who are not fighting in the checkout lines. Right? It builds people who can sit back and build arguments for themselves about why they should make a financial decision. Right? Our logic builds strong-minded adults. That's what it does. Another thing about it, logic is not taught in our schools. So unfortunately, what happens often in Challenge B is that parents come in and see it and say, I don't know how my kid can do this because I don't know how to do it. Your kid will pick it up faster than you, and it's unfortunate because like our culture and our education culture really crippled us in that way. So I knew that I wanted to teach Challenge B when I saw what was in the curriculum because I actually have an undergrad in philosophy, and I took formal logic when I was in philosophy at Union at a Christian school too. So it came from a great background, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, I haven't interacted with this in 20 years. I would love to do this because for me it was such a help to me when I was. I mean, by that time I was in my 20s when I took logic. And it was great for me. So it builds, like I said, it builds people who are able to reason through a problem in a strategic, in a clear and reasoned manner, right? So I think that in that, and it really is true. I've seen students who really don't think that they can do this because it seems foreign, and then they come in and they excel at it, right? My goal with them is not for them to be logic experts. It's to get the basics. You know, we might think when I say the word syllogism, we might think like, ooh, I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's a weird word. It was developed by Aristotle, okay? But what it really has to do with is an argument that we build for ourselves. And we do those on a regular basis. I know this information, so therefore I'm going to make a conclusion about that, or draw a conclusion. That's it. That's what a syllogism is. And we study those. That's really it. It's and learning how to make right conclusion from right information and to avoid the fallacies, which they just read about in Challenge A. And so it's not when it first comes in, it seems foreign to them. And then the second semester is hard. The second semester, we do some symbolic logic. But what I tell them and what I tell parents is it's just like math. When you learn to do algebra, you learn your arithmetic really well, right? So same thing with symbolic logic. When you learn a little bit and you try symbolic logic, you learn the basics of logic very well. That's it. And so do they have to excel at this? No, they just have to do their best. But I find that even when they're doing the best, like I have a room full of students upstairs who just now I went around and walked around and saw all their papers. They produced the square of opposition 100% because they understand. It's not just memorization for them. They understand what it means, and they're working through syllogisms using the procedures that we learn in class. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it seems foreign, but that really, the foreign part of it is really the kind of the thing that trips us up the most. So I believe in what we do there. That's one thing actually that I think is almost like a core life skill for them because it builds thinking patterns that are important, right? We've all struggled through decisions that we've had to make as adults, and why not give us something to enable that? It really is kind of like, it's not for being a professor of something or so that they can teach logic to someone else. It's certainly not for you building arguments against your parents because I told them they're not allowed to do that. But so yes, I believe in what we do there, and I've seen even the ones who come in with they say I really don't know, or students that struggle in other areas. I see them be able to pick up the core principles and understand them because it is kind of basic level thinking.
So kind of along that line, as a parent at home who doesn't get to sit in all the class, how are we supposed to help them through all this?
I'll tell you,
Yes.
nothing.
Yeah, but I think that the difference is going to be like he's passionate about it. He's not willing to toot his own horn about that. But I mean, he literally convinced me in a few minutes, and I'm stubborn. You know, I made up my mind I didn't like it, and he changed my mind in like 2 comments. And I think that the difference was that he's so passionate about it that I was like, your kids are going to pick up on that from him. Whereas if I'm teaching it, they're not going to like it. You know, I could teach the same material, but I'm not going to give them that vibe, and it's so critical.
But how are we supposed to help
So,
them throughout the week?
Logic
Because
itself
I don't
has-
have logic.
Me neither.
Logic has DVDs
Okay.
where there's an actual guide teaching it to you.
Okay.
So then there's also the teacher's guide. So I can read the teacher's guide and still go, huh? But then when you watch the guide teaching it to you, it would be like you were in class.
I just need to know enough to ask the right question to get her to the answer, even if I don't understand.
So I also in Challenge B, I believe it's helpful for the students to have a forum where they can discuss with each other. I try to help them cut down on all the silly memes they send to each other, but
Are
goodness.
you on that forum? I always wondered.
I look over the shoulder,
Okay.
but I'm like, oh goodness. But they do sometimes discuss it, and that's the thing. It's a lifeline, and so it's the same thing. And also, like, I'm willing to do phone calls and meetings whenever, and I've done that at times with parents who are like, I need a discussion on this to understand this, and and it,
Hey, come to thought. What?
I told my Patrick, like, you're gonna have to step it up in this year and challenge me. Because
keep an open mind.
I'm already going like this, trying to tread water for Latin challenge.
So Latin is a repeat. Latin is a repeat in Challenge B. We go a little faster and a little further in the book, but not twice as fast. So they go through the same Latin book 3 times. So they go through it again in Challenge 1. Okay, so 3 times. So Latin is going to be a little bit of a repeat, and that will be a little bit off of the parents' shoulders. And so I think that maybe could find a little bit of, and I've seen Valerie do that because I've tried to be hands off at home with Logic because I want Valerie to be able to do it, and I'm at work half the time. Like, and 2, it's education for her. So I've seen her kind of have more time in the Logic this year than some of the other strands, and I think that's she's gotten through it and said, like, okay, I don't understand this as much, but I'm getting this part. It seems like she's picking up some of it, and so.
The books are very user friendly. Like,
Yes.
you've got your student book, and then you've got your teacher edition, and everything is highlighted. The lessons are short; they're just maybe 2 or 3 pages, and then you've got your answers. If you've got the answer, you can go back and it's highlighted, and it's like, okay, like, I can see the answer. This is how we get the answer. Their brains are just wired for it. It's
They
crazy.
are.
Like, my brain can't do it. Like, my daughter, like, drugged me through the mud, like, through Logic. I'm like, we're gonna do every lesson together. And we did every lesson together. But she was like, and I'm like, hold on, let me think about this. But they get it. They get it. And it's not super easy, but they can totally do it.
So you said one of my banned words. You said I can't. So I'm sorry, I have to call you out there. But you can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. And I've seen lots of parents who come through and pick up the Logic stuff, and they're able to teach it to their child that year, and then other children as they come up through later.
But that's the hardest Logic they do throughout Challenge. The next year is so easy.
So one last question, because this is something that we're struggling with in Challenge A. Lost tools of writing.
Mhm.
Those essays are so boring.
They're supposed to be.
They're
They
supposed
are.
to be.
Do they get better though?
No.
No, they
No.
don't.
Yeah.
This is the purpose of it.
They
The
can
purpose is
fancy
to
them up
learn
a
the
little bit.
techniques.
Still not like
The
essentials.
purpose.
Because going from, it's hard going from essentials
Yes.
where I'm like,
Yes.
she's produced things that I'm
Yes.
like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I enjoy reading this, to
Yeah.
something that I'm like, I don't know if you can turn this in. Is this what you're supposed to be doing?
Yes. So it is as an engineer, I'm like, I like LTW because it just gives you something and you just fill it out.
This
And
is
all
the
you're
best
supposed to
series.
all you're supposed to do is focus on the techniques. And the techniques have exercises and worksheets with them. And I'm like, do the worksheets. It's honestly the times the students aren't doing the worksheets that then they're like, this is so boring. And I'm like, it's because you're not focusing on the exercise activity. And I know that's hard. There's lots of work to do. But yeah, that's actually one of the hardest things about LTW is getting the time to go back and do the worksheets because it's a thinking exercise. And like there's ones where they're having to think about building parallel structures in the parallelism ones, and you know what I'm saying. Like all those things, doing the exercises, right? Doing those activities, those worksheets is kind of like a mental brainstorming, but it's about language, and those are the useful part. Everything else, it's like hanging ornaments on a Christmas tree. You build a thing, and then you just put it on the tree, which is the outline, and becomes an essay. Yes, it's formulaic. Yes, the final essay is boring. It's the activity, the exercise of doing those worksheets that's actually the valuable part. So the last thing that I want to say is that in my Challenge B class, I am I call on students, right? Every student is going to be expected to answer questions in every strand throughout the day. And they'll often look at me and be like, oh, I'm not ready. And I'm like, yes, you are. And I'll prime them with the question, and they're like, well, yes, I know that. And I'm like, see, you know this. And so that's a lot of what I do. And I feel that it's about confidence. It's also about that then the class as a team sees that everyone is valuable and able to contribute, right? So I do not let, and specifically for students who are quieter people who don't want to speak up, I gently kind of lift them out of that and say, you've got to participate too. And what it does is that everyone sees that everyone is a valuable contributor, rather than kind of like what we saw or what I saw in public schools of like, you know, the 2 or 3 who know everything and everyone else can't do it. That's absolutely not true. And what they need is they need some confidence building, and I work painstakingly to go around the room and call on every person and work through every strand of the day. And they all, like, the train starts moving and they all come along with it. So the bare minimum that I tell them throughout the year is you've at least got to be trying. Don't give up on a strand, because then what happens is that it kind of pulls everyone else back. We've all got to be trying. It's not about perfection, it's about just doing your best, right? Because some people I've had students who are like, oh, I'm giving up on logic, or I'm giving up on this or that, or whatever. And the rest of the class then is kind of like, well, what about that person? They're not coming along with the rest of us and helping the train keep moving, because it's a team, and it becomes more of a team thing as they get through the challenge years. And mock trial kind of starts to make it a team thing. So I call on every student, and they start to understand that they all are valuable contributors. Any other final questions? I think my time is up.
I have a question.
Excellent.
What do you do if you have a child that is just says they're burnt out and they just don't want to do it and they're stubborn? Do you have any? Yes. Well, I mean, I have some that will sit there for 12 hours at the kitchen table, and I've tried everything from, and they're content.
So the peer pressure of class, typically,
right,
everyone is there to contribute.
Yes.
And I will also say to them, you need to be expecting more from yourself.
Right.
I say to them because it's true. They need to be expecting more from themselves. I tell them that they need to view their work as something that's given to them by God and an opportunity to transform them into the person He wants them to be. That's kind of the way that I frame that. And so that they need to start kind of seeing it as a positive opportunity to get involved in this work that is transforming them, rather than seeing it as kind of like a burden on their life. Right. That's the way that I handle that. And like I said, the peer pressure of everyone else moving along, pulling the train, and then they start to, and then the person will perk up and participate. So now, how things go at home, I can't, right? I don't I don't run that, but what I try to do in the class time is a whole lot of encouragement to say, like, this is a positive thing that we're doing. This is not a burden, this is a positive thing. It's preparing you to be who God wants you to be, which is the only thing that really matters. Right? Alright, I think my time's up, and challenge 1 should be here. Here she is. Y'all have a great day. Merry Christmas.
All right, challenge 1. So this was my first year having a challenge 1 child, as well as first year directing challenge 1. So it's been a challenge. Okay, so if you turn to page, 58. I wasn't going to go there. I was going to go to the curriculum. Yes, 104. All right, so this year is all about the title is Discipline is the Cornerstone of Freedom. And I've heard, so since I've not had a child beyond challenge 1, and there are some in here that have, you can speak up if you have great wisdom, that it is kind of that hop into high school where it's kind of you know how challenge A, if you've had a challenge A student, it's a change, right? It's a change from foundations and essentials, and that's kind of the same thing for challenge 1. In logic, they are doing the strand logic, not the subject logic. They are doing algebra. They will walk through the 5 common topics, just as in challenge A and challenge B. For grammar, they are doing the Henley Latin 1. So I love that CC does this. It's always you don't just see something, and it really is the classical education, right? You don't just see something once, you see it again and again. So challenge A is lessons 1 through 15. Challenge B, they're going back to the 115, but they're going a little further to 1 through 29. And then challenge 1 is the 5th semester, they do all that 1 through 29, and 2nd semester, then they'll start new from 30 to 42. So that's the grammar strand. For research, they're doing apology of physical science. So it's kind of a starting point for physics, and also has some chemistry, which is challenge 3 and 4. They'll do formal lab reports. They have 3 each semester, and I think that will lead into 2 where they do even more. They'll do every other week. We do experiments, which I don't know if you have the younger kids and have walked through experiments and foundations. The freshmen, the 14 and 15-year-olds, get just as excited about doing experiments as the little ones. And it's really neat because it's not just, and I know in foundations you're trying to explain the why, but here they're really then reading about the why. They're really digging into being able to explain it and understand the experiments better. On the 2nd semester of research, they have a research paper. So that's about 8 to 9 pages, and it's a super essay. So think of, if you've done IW Faces of History, 3 of those in this one paper. So I look forward to doing that with my kiddo. And they'll write index cards. I think it's up to 180 index cards total to write their paper. And then this is really the first start, the physical science stream, of them taking notes and learning how to take notes and learning what's useful for them. And just that's just such a great skill that that we use always. The next strand is reasoning. So that is, so in Challenge B, as I'm sure Mr. Trautman said, they go through introduction to logic and then intermediate logic. So in Challenge 1, it's traditional logic 1, but it's a different curriculum than they did in B. And it's a little bit, it's not as complex as Challenge B, which is helpful because there are a ton of projects that they're doing this year. So it's a little bit of a review. And then it's the precursor to, in Challenge 2, they'll do the traditional logic 2. It's the Memorial Press. So that's the first semester. The second semester is drama. So we'll go through Taming of the Shrew, and then they'll also have a Shakespeare project, which I've been reading more about. Obviously, that's coming up. And it just looks, I'm so excited for the kids. It's just an opportunity for them to learn about the times and the life and the culture around Shakespeare, and then present a 3 to 5 minute presentation. And it can be, I mean, I have a list of different things, but they can cook an entire Elizabethan feast, a dessert or a food item. They could do a PowerPoint or a poster on Shakespeare's favorite weapons, clothing styles, which I'm thinking my daughter would love that. A timeline of Shakespeare's life. I mean, all this gamut of things that they're able to do. So there are many projects in Challenge 1, and they're mostly on the second semester. So they're kind of full, but I'm really looking forward to them. Even just, we did a history presentation of the 1930s. They were assigned a different, the stock market or Hoover, and that was kind of neat to have them each get up and do something that was different and introduce it and present to the class. Let's see. So next strand, exposition. So again, this is kind of one of those things that CC does where they have essentials, the same, they have IEW doing essentials for 3 years. So this is kind of what LTW is as well. They have done it in A, they have done it in B, and then they do it in 1. And this year, if you can turn to page 107, or 106 and 107, you see all the books that they are assigned to read. So some of those are very familiar probably to some of you. Call of the Wild, Tom Sawyer, To Kill a Mockingbird. So they'll take, they'll write essays. They'll have basically a 3-week time period to write the Annie chart, the outline, and then the essay. Now there's many of these books, I shouldn't say many, there's several of these books that they don't do an essay on, but they do class discussion, which is wonderful. I'll go into that a little bit in American Documents, but I love it. I love hearing them because they're taking what they know, they're pulling all these pieces of, okay, I know this happened in the timeline, I heard this, but now they're reading about things and they're putting it together. So that a lot of those are for class discussion. The next strand is the debate strand. So debate strand in Challenge 1 is a little different because you kind of have you have the debate itself, team policy debate, and but then you also have American government and economics that fall into the category or into the strand of debate. So for first semester, they're reading through the American documents, which, if you want to look at the picture of it, it's at the bottom left of 105, which is really cool. And I'll read it. It says, the collection of articles, speeches, poems, and legal documents helps students read original sources. So they'll learn how to annotate. They'll take, what was the last one they did? First inaugural address of Ronald Reagan. And they'll read through that, and their teacher will tell them, we talk through annotation, what's important, circling things, highlighting things, and then they come up with their own summary. And this is really cool because then in class we have discussions about all the timeline events that surround that. The 5 common topics, we've got that circumstance, what's happening while this was happening. So we've had some really neat, again, like LT or exposition, we've had some really cool discussions. And it says in the guide, and I wanted to read this to you just because it helped me. So the students may be familiar with events, but may not have encountered the thoughts and ideas that inspired and propelled such events. So that foundations, they have all this knowledge of this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But then, what was the thoughts of these people? What were the ideas? What came out of the events that they have memorized? So that is first semester. And then second semester, they have the stock market project. So they actually do like they'll do what's the word? It's like a faux setup of the stock market. So then they'll track stocks and notice how they their valuation or their weekly valuation. So that'll be neat. And then cost of living. They have a cost of living project. So they take. There's two ways to do it. One is how much are you that student at that time? What is your cost to your parents? Like the electricity, your food, all of that. And then there's the other, which is I think most classes do, is they look forward in time to when I'm 23. Let's say I did a trade school or went to college. What are my expenses going to be? What am I getting paid based on what I want to do? And then they'll go through all of that, and eyes will be open.
I was about to say, does it scare them a little bit?
Oh yeah, it should.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. It's usually the taxes.
I was just gonna say.
What? They take half your paycheck, but they love it.
Yes.
So, with economics, I wanted to do a personal finance or a Dave Ramsey course at some point in the teenage
yeah.
years. Oh, does this cover that instead? I wouldn't have to do that, or should I do that alongside this?
Oh, well, I don't know. I haven't dug into each one, so I don't know yet. I can't answer that.
Would it be a good time to do it?
Oh, probably, yeah.
I would think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Or they have too much work to do until I'm one. I don't know.
I guess it would depend on students.
In our experience, the cost of living wasn't very, very time consuming. You sit down together, you look up calculators, and you say, look up apartments or a house or what the groceries cost and things like that. But it's not
funny.
like a research paper. It's
Yeah.
So that probably would be a good time.
They want that apartment with a heated pool, and then you're like, well, that's going to be $300 extra a month. And then they don't really care about if it's a heated pool or not. Just kind of watching how those things.
And Hannah, after she was like, no, don't buy that. It's too expensive.
Well, like what Mary said about the taxes too, when we were talking about the Tea Party, right? They were complaining over 4% taxes. And now the kids are like, what? 20%?
Now we get taxed twice.
That's right. That's right.
Better start your LLC. I wish we could go through an adult class of that. Like, how if you have your own LLC company, then you can pay your children some stuff, and you get to write off some of all of these things. But nobody knows how to do it. Who teaches those things? The life skills.
Right.
I would sign up.
I know. Well, I'm not volunteering. I'm not. That was one of those rabbit trail at 11 o'clock. This woman pops up and she's like, "How to be a millionaire?" And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "You don't know these things." Well, 2 hours later, I'm calling. Tyler was at work on a 24, and I'm calling him. I'm like, "We need to do all of these things." He's like, "You're gonna have to talk to me at not 2 o'clock in the morning." But it sounded like a great idea. It sounded good.
So they have, in Challenge B, they start practicing debate through the mock trial, and then in Challenge 1, there's the intro to team policy debate. So it's kind of the grammar stage of team policy debate, that first semester. So they're just going in class, and we had ours, I think, week 11, 12, or 10 and 11. And they got up, and my class did the military draft, and then they have a resolution. The government policies should change, is the affirmative, and then the negative would be it should stay the same. But they go through, there's several different death penalty. This is class dependent. Death penalty, these are the options. Military draft, income tax, energy policy, immigration policy. But it's giving them these opportunities to think clearly and help articulate truth, which is what we want, right? End goal is for them to articulate the gospel and truth. And so second semester, it's a little bit more in depth. And this intro to debate also preps them for the Lincoln-Douglas debates. So this is about value rather than a government policy. They also do, throughout the second semester, there are 2 individual events. So this is kind of a neat thing too. So it's a 3 to 5 minute memorization of it can be a poem, it can be a prose, it can be something from a play. It just can't be original or media, but it can be historical speeches. They could do scripture, historical sermons. So they'll present that in a dramatic way. They do 2 of those. And so this is pretty cool too, because this allows a student to complete the cycle of the 5 canons of rhetoric. So the invention, they've done arrangement, elocution, memory, and then the delivery of the idea. That's all I have. Are there any questions that I could address?
I have a comment about the challenge one. Of course, Lily's in your class this year. She came from public school. This is her first year at CC. And one of the biggest things that she learned in the word Catholic spoken was the annotation and actually understanding it. Right? In public school, if you give them a document like that that's complex, they read it, they summarize it. It's not what this curriculum teaches. This curriculum is far superior to what they've seen in public school. The way they articulate it.
That's good.
One of my favorite things in Challenge 1 is the economics book, because it teaches the student that one of the things that really stood out to me in the book was what happens halfway across the world impacts us more than what happens in our own country. And then when you do the stock market game, to be able to tie those 2 things together and how it affects the stock market and all that, it's really a mature thing to be able to research and then tie the 2 things together and whatnot. So they did it in the spring, and I was like, do Home Depot, because everybody's doing home projects. Yeah. And my son didn't listen to me. And don't you know that shot right up? I said, women are the ones that spend the money. Anyways, so that was fun.
We read the Tuttle books over the summer,
So
and the Tuttle
great.
twins, and my kids, every time we go to the store, Brent's like, inflation.
Have you watched the cartoons? Like, have you seen it?
I haven't seen them yet.
Oh,
Are they
they're
good?
fantastic.
Are they?
Yes,
Really?
and William, who like has no clue what's going on in anything, will like say something. He's like, "That was because of inflation." And we're like, I mean, he understands like those concepts because the crazy granny that rides around on the scooter, like they're hilarious.
Oh,
They're good. They're good. It's always like got a very solid point behind it.
That's good. Where do you
The
get
inflation monster. That's what she's.
Yes.
I mean, it's just on my TV.
It's just on my TV.
My kids do.
Magically appears.
Yes, I
Daily Wire? Did they do that now, or is that
maybe I can find out and post it,
Yeah,
but
that would be great.
I'll have to ask Will.
Well, the economics curriculum for Challenge 1 is so awesome. So it's like Tuttle Twins for young people. Well, the books are so much fun to read. As a parent, you'll enjoy reading them. Like, it's overwhelming as parents to have all this curriculum. It's hard to get through it all, so I certainly don't. But that I enjoyed. And they're not as hefty.
And they're very easy to read.
But
I have them if people want to borrow or pass out. They don't like follow on each other, so there's like 10, 11 maybe books, so you don't have to read one to read number 2, if that makes sense. So anybody that wants to borrow
Any other questions or comments? It's always so helpful. I love when parents are sharing and encouraging those that haven't done it.
super easy.
Would this be the year to do Team Pack 4-day class if you're going to do it?
Oh, I don't know. Thoughts?
Because it's American. Is this really the American history?
I
type?
think
Yeah.
what
It's
Mr.
really good
Trautman
answer.
said, it's all about building their confidence and stuff. So I would highly recommend any experience that they can have, just speaking in public or, or any of that. I would, if you're able to do it.
We're gonna do the one day.
Challenge
class for
3 is
last.
also another year.
Okay.
Heavy American.
Oh, okay.
Challenge 3. It's a very heavy book. So, very. You can hurt someone with it.
Oh, that's the Patriots.
No, it's a,
Wait.
yes.
Patriots guys.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot the title. I just have this like,
It's
it's blue.
and it's heavy. It's a huge one.
It's a doorstop fitness. It's like finish out of that.
For anyone who's has a kid going into one next year, if you look at all the projects they have second semester, it can seem overwhelming, but if you just pace yourself and do it like little piece by piece, it's really smooth.
It's fun too, I
It
think.
is fun.
It's fun.
I love that's my favorite. I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
What are we
All the
I
time
know
for
that they, I'm sorry.
No.
I know they have protocol and stuff coming up. But is that like going to be like an etiquette class? I know what
Yeah,
the event is and all of that. But how do we? Is there something we
As
need to be doing
parents.
to prepare?
You can volunteer.
Go ahead.
So, in the past, they've done like a lunch. I don't know why I said this, but it's like a lunch. And at my daughter's community last year, we did like the moms like catered, like a mom made food, and we had white tablecloths, and the kids sat down and ate. We served them like, and you like it's like white tablecloth restaurant. Like we were the servers, and then so we served them, and then as we were serving them, another mom would stand at a podium and discuss certain parts of etiquette, table manners, queen's rules, gender roles, like let a man do this, give him the honor to let him do that, like be humble, but what else?
What side to serve on?
What side to serve on, like all that kind
How
of
to
stuff.
pass
And it was
food
still like
properly.
their lunch hour.
Mhm.
Of course, they're
I know
like
they
giggling and
Jenny
silly,
Andrews
but
has done that in the past.
that was the first time we done that, but I really liked
Okay.
it. It just
Nice.
takes the
That's
organization
I
of
knew
moms.
that they had it.
I was gonna talk.
I remember Elo came home and she was like, the boys have to stand up every time we get up and go down, so all of us girls in class are talking about that we're going to go to the bathroom 1,000 times just to make you know how they all are. I mean, I'm sure
They're
mine
petty.
was the ring-eater. But I'm like, what do we do as parents to get the boys to know that they are supposed to stand up that's where I'm kind of like, don't know
Yes.
what that gap.
Yeah,
I
so the
have-
moms do it somehow, but I don't know who organizes all that.
Is that challenge 2 or is that challenge
One.
1 that starts?
It's
Well,
all of
starts
them, all
with-
four.
Becky
Yeah.
Irma had it at her
She
house
was
one time,
okay.
and she actually had B serving A. So I liked that because it gave B as the servers, and then A more of the table manners and stuff. And she did it at her house, which made it more like it was nice.
Yeah.
And they got to help prepare the food and everything.
Oh, I got both. Here,
Oh.
just take the whole thing.
Okay. I want to sit in.
Everyone can fix themselves a coffee or something when you're done. Will you?
Yes.
Have some snacks.
Sausage yourselves.
I got it.
But any other thoughts or?
Alright, well, I love seeing all the familiar faces, but I don't see them.
Thank you.
Just all
Thank
y'all.
I'm Mary Almonte. I am the director for Challenge 2. I plan on being the director for Challenge 2 for 24, 25. Oh my gosh, it's so weird. I'm like, we don't even have flying cars yet. Well, I guess we do. Anyway, all right. So I'm just going to really quick give my short summary of Challenge 2. Then I'll kind of walk through a few points. Those of you with handouts, I tell you what that's all about in a minute. Some of you already know, you can see what it is. Just some quick printouts from Challenge 2 guide. Snapshot, I think it's really helpful. I don't know about you, but at the end of the summer, you're like, what's going on? What am I doing with my child? Kind of nice to have it in your hands. So, Challenge 2, I would say Challenge 2 through 4 is when our kids are becoming more adult. And now they're going to do way more independent work than they've ever done. Of course, everyone's kid is different. Parents teach differently, but at this point, I as a director will recap less than past directors because they should have all the information they need already in their guides, from discussion in class. I will recap things that I believe parents might find helpful, and those parents can then say, hey, I need more information, and then I'll give you that. The only time I would really go into a thorough recap of a week is going to be when something's changed or something special's happening. So challenge 2. My opinion, the theme is, of course, freedom gives us ability to have noble choices. If you want to actually, if you have a catalog, turn to page 60 and have it open while we're chit-chatting about challenge 2. So freedom provides opportunities for noble choices. My perspective is it's also giving them understanding, not just how to use freedom to make noble choices, but understanding of culture and politics of the world, and whether or not freedom is being used to make noble choices. So now they've been given so much armor from challenge 1. Now they're going to get even more armor and even more resources and tools to be able to understand the world around them and to be able to see what choices are being made from freedom. Is this freedom? Is this not freedom? They'll be able to, this is all going to be revealed through all the strands to a degree. Obviously, everyone asks about how that works with math. Well, in my opinion, it's because we use the 5 common topics to break down math. And we're practicing those tools of understanding and grasping something that not everyone is doing the same math. And so those same tools we use to look at the world around us. So we're just going to keep practicing using those tools. So that's why. But they'll especially be focusing on the condition of the world, culturally and politically, through in debate. Debate is the heaviest strand. But I will say, my opinion, all strands are great, but I think challenge 2 is the greatest because it's so packed full of art and fun, and the kids are already analyzing and they're already curious about everything. So this is when they get to really understand art. And I went to school for art, and I think that there's a lot of wishy-washy understanding of art. And I'm just going to tell you right now, and they're going to learn, art is just a product of the condition of the culture. And they're going to be evaluating whether it reflects truth, whether it should be about mankind or God or whatever, or if it's not. Or if there's some of both. Like, did they get something right here? Or they were doing it, they were affected by the world around them, or something going on in their hearts, or things like that. So, totally just went off my script. So I'm probably going to repeat myself now. So this is, I would also say, this year is also a year of eye-opening. So again, they're looking at the world, and it's kind of like what Julie said when it comes to economics. This is the year where all the just get stripped away when it comes to politics and governments all over the world, historically and current. And they're going to start to see how the condition of the world governments and art media and how sin affects these systems. And you're also going to see how does the truth of God's word stand up to that. So it's really cool. And you know, I can't see how kids can walk away not knowing, but it's especially important for the parents to dialogue about these things to make sure that that stuff is being grasped. So, let me see here. Okay, so really quick, I'm just going to go through the strands very briefly, and where I need to, I'll cross-reference to some of the things that we printed out. This is the snapshot of the year, first semester, and the second page of the second semester. The logic is the same. Kids are going to bring in something they're working on at home. I am not like strict about logic. If a kid comes in without a problem, that to me, we can whip one up on the fly. Personally, I think, and I will always come in with a math book of sorts that we can pull in from. So we will be using the 5 common topics to discuss those problems and just again keep kids unafraid because they have these useful tools to approach any level of math, whether they understand all the concepts. Grammar. I'm going to be honest with you. This year, my student is not heavy into Latin right now, so I'm still learning Latin, but this is probably where it changes. They're doing translation that becomes more about actual historical events. So they're going to be discussing, if you look at the bottom, it says, especially the second semester, they're going to be reading and translating and discussing influential conquests of Caesar, right? So in the first semester, they'll be going over some historical events, Roman history. This is still has to do with the whole freedom is an opportunity to provide for us to have noble choices because we're evaluating history and we're seeing the choices that are being made and we're seeing what the condition of freedom is in those circumstances at the same time as understanding and reinforcing our grammar and understanding the English grammar, not because as we learn Latin, it's just reinforcing the English grammar. So research. All right. So science is fun. This is the coolest year because microscope. Everyone's excited about the microscope. So they're going to be looking at the microscope, analyzing microscopic things. Obviously, it's biology. Most kids really seem to enjoy that subject. I love it personally, again, because I feel like all I'm doing is worshiping God the whole time because we're just sitting there looking at everything He's made really up close and asking good questions about that. Second semester is when we start getting into dissections. And at the end of the year, we have larger specimens to dissect. So they get real excited about that. Carmen did pig fetus. That's probably what I would do. I'm doing that this year as well. Because I have a small class, I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. So we have a lot of time. We're just going to be cutting things open and identifying things left and right. So that's exciting. Reasoning. So in challenge 1, they're doing logic 1. This is logic 2. And they just go further into all the different types of syllogisms. They leave categorical syllogisms and they start to go into hypotheticals. So that's fun because kids do that naturally all the time and we hear it on the news. So, if this, then that, therefore this, and it's fun. But what I love again about this strand is I feel like it arms our children even more. And they start to observe more and more and more how people are making these statements and how people sometimes make statements a lot that contradict themselves. And there's just this lack of awareness. But I don't want to be all judgy and us sit here and look at everyone else's problems. It's great for kids to see because as we know, I don't know who said this, but teenagers can be little brats, right? And they're so opinionated, but this is the stage they're in. So they're analytical and they just want to express it all. So now we're giving them all these wonderful tools on how to be careful and more humble and evaluate and self-evaluate. Is this really logical? Is this really sound? And are my words, am I practicing freedom right now with my words? And is it going to produce something noble? So here, once again, it's just a perfect tie-in. And with reasoning, we use it, you can use it for all the strands. So like technically on a blue book, I could just say, we're not doing one section on reasoning. We're going to use reasoning. You're going to do syllogism for math, and you're going to do a syllogism for debate, and you're going to do a syllogism for this, because it's really cool. You can use them to analyze and break down and understand anything. Let's see here. So exposition is probably fairly light. And when I say light, I mean their essays don't have to be extremely long. They will be writing, I think, a couple of persuasive essays, but mostly their opinion and comparison. So they'll be reading British literature, and they'll be comparing characters. And again, this is evaluating choices that are being made. And there will be some very critical, I'm sure we'll have some really exciting opinions because there's a lot of satire. So there's some extreme satire used that kids often hyper-react to because it's, once one person reacts, they all start reacting and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said this. So there's one book, I think it's the proposal. Everything. Let me find it actually. The modest proposal. Thank you. And there's like a comparison of the value of life. He just basically starts saying, well, there's so many kids, let's just start eating them. And kids are like, what? Well, he's, making fun of all the people who think so little of those from poverty. And there are people starving, so he sort of like critiques the culture at the time who's thinking so little of those who are in need. And so he's using that satire. But the kids, of course, will enjoy reacting to that. That's a lot of fun. And it spurs a lot of dialogue. And they'll come home, okay, well, I guess we should eat babies, so don't freak out. It's okay. And yeah, so exposition. There's something I was missing. I forgot to touch on something. The first semester, back to reasoning. First semester is Logic 2. Second semester, they're going to be reading the Socratic dialogue. This is even more important because when they're studying logic, they can become so very logical that they can also be insensitive. And while we want them to understand the world around them and be able to perceive fallacies and stuff, we also want them to dialogue thoughtfully with people about that and ultimately give them the tools to speak about the gospel and lead it that way. And so this is a great opportunity where they're actually going to practice that dialogue. And if you look in the back of your packet, for those who have them, in the back of the guide, one of the rhetorical assignments, the only one really for reasoning, is the Socratic dialogue, where they will prepare a dialogue with a partner, and they will basically act out that dialogue of a person who is the teacher, who's leading a student by asking good questions. And in those questions, it should ultimately lead them to a place where they can come to good conclusions. And it's not that they're manipulative, it's causing the student to think more, right? Because again, the great thing about this is I can even ask a child or a student and say, hey, what do you think about this? Well, I think it's like this, and it will be, they've had this assertive opinion without having any experience at all about it, right? Because kids do that. They'll have one opinion, they haven't quite experienced everything yet, so they come to this very hard, rash opinion. And so then I can demonstrate and help them to ask themselves some more questions to think a little more about that before they go right there, right away, right? And that's what Socratic dialogue is about. But even more importantly, a wonderful, wonderful tool to help them know how to share the gospel. And in any place, to be able to engage in a conversation with any person. So, and it's a skinny book too, by the way, not heavy. Yes.
It's also helped my parenting.
Yes.
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 I've learned a lot from it. I'm like, wait a second. I'm going about this the wrong way.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny.
I mean,
you
at
say
that age, that's where they're becoming more mature. And you
Yeah.
could start reflecting questions on them to get
Yes.
them to, when they're starting to make choices.
Exactly. I will actually say on that note, as a parent, getting to know this curriculum, and it took me a while to really kind of figure out classical homeschooling and everything. It's a lot. It's just so awesome, but it is also very humbling. So definitely working through this has helped me be a better parent because I would be aware that I was, moving on from the subject really quickly. shutting kids down and realizing they're in this phase of their life where I actually don't need to end the conversation right now. You can talk, put everything down, and go ahead and have that dialogue. So yeah, it's very nice. Good for us, good for them. I want to go ahead and hit debate because that's the heaviest. It's heavy because they will be doing 2 team policy debates, one in the fall and one in the spring, early winter. And you can see, when you look at the guide, you can see a little bit difference. It's a little darker in the spots where there are special events, projects, essays due, or presentations. So you can see in the first semester team policy debate is week 5. And by this time, they were kind of nursed into it through challenge 1. Now it's kind of just like they should just roll through it. They should be able to just kind of quickly gather, quickly talk about it. And one thing we had to work through with my daughters was remembering this is not the end-all be-all project. Do your best. You don't have to have the perfect arguments. You want to make sure you checked your list off so that you're familiar with the procedure. And once you're through with that, if you have time and you want to amp it up and edit and make it even better, then awesome. So kids can get stressed about debate, but I just try to encourage just think of this as you're going to the gym and you have a routine to lift weights. You're not going to be a bodybuilder that same day. It's the same thing with team policy. We are exercising. That's it. We are exercising. We're becoming familiar with the process, and we're doing the best we can. That's it. So probably right away, the first week they would get what they need. You would come up with a topic and start carrying off. Just because I like to try to give people more time, because everyone lives everywhere. And that's really the biggest issue. So debate, you have these actual policy debate, and in the second semester you have the Lincoln Douglas, which, as Julie mentioned, is a value debate. So, and it's also individual. So you don't have to worry about pairing up with someone and communicating and working out schedules. It's just a whole different type of debate. They'll have a little bit more time to prepare for that. The other project, if you can see in week 10 under debate, is the art grant proposal. Now, this one is super fun, but it also is kind of mysterious at first when you look at it. I didn't know what I was doing when Carmen was in here. I was like, what is that? I don't understand. And the instructions seemed kind of vague to me. So I just really want to quickly actually tell you about that. So if you turn to rhetorical assignments, those who have these, overview for, it doesn't say first semester, but week 10 is when it's due. And here's this nice synopsis of what this whole thing entails. They basically are presenting a proposal for any kind of event that's sort of arts related. And it's just like in the real world, artists do this, right? They don't have the money to fund this special thing they want to do, special project. So they go and they submit a formal proposal. There's actually tons of YouTube videos done by artists and those who receive proposals on how to do this. Your kid could actually do a real one if they wanted to. Have a class and go actually submit it in the real world and see if they could get support for it. So the class, we would kind of come to agreement of how much money they're hoping to get for their proposal. I think the vague and weird part comes in is that it's so open. There's so many different kinds of proposals you can make, projects, that's where people start to get a little confused. But what helps you is the explanation here. It's a simulation, right? Like I said, of how to receive an art grant from organizations, so like from National Endowment of the Arts or for the arts. At the end, the peers will kind of vote for each other. they say there's 5 people who can win. It depends on the size of the class. And the winning part is just encouraging. I think it gives a little push for the kids. The presentation itself is only 5 minutes. So what I want to say about that is this. This is really cool. And many here may be in the business world where we have to do presentations. So you know that a kid might say, well, why do I have to make a visual and do all this work for only 5 minutes? But a lot of proposals and a lot of things that happen in the business world, you have less than 5 minutes to completely wow someone, right? And to get support for that project. So, yes, it's only 5 minutes. So you want to make those 5 minutes count and show how much you love your project. And yes, there need to be visuals. And whoever's here next year or in the summer will go over that a little more. My opinion says it has to have visual. To me, a visual is if someone wanted to propose that there be a play put on in the park and they need funding for this play for costumes to pay for the reservation of the space and any other funding they need, like musicians or something like that, then they would probably come in dressed as a character of whatever story they were going to be playing on. And I would suggest maybe they would have a board that had logistics on there. It doesn't have to be a hugely decorated board. Some people will do PowerPoint, but you don't have to do that either. So there's all kinds of visual aids. Anything that's going to help push your idea and get funding for it. So the other thing is like you could just literally have that kind of event that's community. It could be something like an artist wants to travel and increase their ability to be able to do certain type of art with it covering a certain theme. So let's say I want to study art in like ancient Greece, and I want to implement art from that period, from that culture, but I need to be integrated in it. And then I will propose that I have this money, probably to help me with my flight maybe, or to help me with supplies, and I'll go study this art and I'll produce that art, and the end might be that I'm going to have this show at this location, right? So that's my proposal. So you do have, there's logistics that have to work out. So I don't feel like I had this explained heavily to me as a parent, but I also hadn't quite gotten fluent with where everything is and all the guides, and I kind of got thrown into each year with events in my life. So I will want to make it as clear as possible for parents so that it is as fun as it could be, because it really is. I mean, the kids get to choose whatever they want. So that's cool. Okay. We're doing okay. I'm almost done. So that's to date. I think I got everything. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Okay. So again, debate. We talked about Lincoln Douglas. Now they have this project. They also will go to a museum. We go to Atlanta to an art museum for the day. Parents can come if they want to join. Family members can come. It's really open, but it is for especially the Challenge 2. We collaborate with several other campuses and go there. And that's a blast. The point of that trip, though, is as they do a special tour with the dojo who takes them in to engage the art. It's really awesome. They then will pick a piece of art, and they will have to create a persuasive essay as to why that art portrays truth of some sort about God, man, world, culture, whatever, or how it doesn't. Okay, it's that simple. And that assignment is in the rhetorical assignments in the back of the guide, which I printed out and we were just looking at. It's right underneath the grant. It's an essay, but they will be doing a speech. So, just basically speech. Again, what's cool about this is they get to choose. What I will try to do is, whatever art they choose, I hope they like it, because I will probably get an actual copy of that artwork for them in a poster form that they can also use as their visual aid. So, and the big thing I want to talk about, actually, is the curriculum that is the coolest in debate is How Should We Then Live? Have any of you heard of Francis Schaeffer? Yeah? Okay, so cool. They call him Mr. Knickerbockers. And one student has told me they don't think his beard is real. It's totally real. They don't actually have to read the book, but I still suggest they have it because it's so heavy, each chapter, each episode, and dense. He doesn't waste time. He's not a fast talker, but he's an efficient speaker and with wonderful, wonderful vocabulary that's dense and rich. So while they will have this really wonderful notebook that in the back they'll be able to take notes from each episode, it kind of guides them as to what to pay attention to as they're listening. If they miss something, they can go home and they can open the book and look for it. So, which is only going to reinstill all the wonderful information in there. And Francis Schaeffer, artist, philosopher, theologian, apologist, brilliant person who in his time could see way ahead what was happening, and it is happening. That's all I have to say. But he basically will show your kids how the condition of the world has affected governments and art. How should we look at art? Why is the art looking this way? So he goes through that. They will also be covering music. He talks about the music as well. They'll be using, just like in Foundations and Essentials, they'll be going back to this and just kind of rereading. We'll be listening to specific symphonies and such in class. And that's actually the lightest and most fun because they're really just paying attention to the unique compositions and patterns of each period and how it changes, which also reflects what's happening all around them. And Francis Schaeffer touches on this. The other thing is that in this same notebook, there are some errors in it. Someone created this, they did an awesome job, but I did discover some errors. Actually, I didn't. Ellie did. Ellie found it. I was like, oh my god, I don't know I wonder if I can change this. Yeah, it looks fine. Here we go. They're both great. But it's based off of this book. And this is their book that they'll be using when they're discussing art. The intro is fabulous. In all my notes. So each week they will be covering an artist. We will introduce them and then they'll write an essay about that artist. Details are in the guide. I won't go too much in that because I'm running out of time. But the cool thing is each chapter starts with questions that they first need to sort of respond. It will help them to go in. It's nice to look at art, first just respond to it, and then read about it and be like, oh, what did I get? Just right away. Because a good artist should effectively communicate visually without them having to spell it out. So this is going to give your kids some art literacy. By the way, that to me is another theme of CC. What do you say, Casey? Like it's art literacy. I mean literacy in general. Your literacy increases with all of their curriculum, all types of literacy, right? So it's not just understanding the world and being able to express truth, but also understanding and being literate, and able to recognize those truths or deceptions. So, yeah, so they'll be reading through here. It's actually a lot of fun, also not heavy. So even though there's a lot to do in debate, it's smooth, it's easy. I don't say easy and like not challenging at all, but you know what I'm saying.
Enjoyable.
Thank you. Your kids aren't gonna be like, oh, I gotta read Marvelous World again. Like they're gonna enjoy it. And in here is where they will write the data and information. It's just a helpful guide. You as a parent may not press them to utilize this, but it's a wonderful tool to help them to kind of process the art and what they're reading. I mean, it's also very simple. So, but it will help kind of plant things in their brain. I think I covered everything. Does anyone have any questions?
Another question.
Sure.
Looking on page 40 in the guide, challenge 2 is the first year that has that little asterisk there, college credit. Can you talk about that?
There is, so there's an opportunity for dual enrollment for, I think, specific subjects. I haven't done this. Does anyone else want to speak to it?
I've done it for challenge 3 and 4. We didn't start in challenge 2, but
I
you
haven't,
can.
but there's a QR code on page 70.
Thank you.
Challenge
There's-
2, they do offer literature. My daughter did that. It's fantastic. So if you have a child that could use additional insight for writing in particular, because in Challenge 2 they don't have a formal writing curriculum, but the experience was they asked the student, what are your goals in what you hope to grow as a writer, and so then the professor holds them to that, and so it's kind of a developing skills on working through the portal online that they have to use, hitting timelines. They're unforgivable as far as meeting those deadlines that they're given, which is a great skill at that age. And then also the specific feedback to their particular writing and what they're trying to grow in was really helpful.
So was all that online?
It was all online, yes.
It runs concurrent with what they're doing in class.
Yes.
So it's not like a whole separate book, separate project. Like they will
You have to
teach
do
it up, fix
everything
it up,
in the
and
guide. Yeah.
they turn it for class, and then they'll submit it to the professor.
Any additional assignments, or like, I don't understand.
No. If your child is able to do 90% or better of the challenge guide material in A, B, and 1, when you get to 2, you should really consider the college credit, because if it's becoming easy for them to complete everything that's in the guide, it lays it out so nicely. But if they're more closer to the 80%, maybe wait until 3 or 4 when they can develop that skill a little bit better. But that's how you can assess whether or not they're ready.
So they're already doing it,
Yes,
and so might as well get college credit for it too.
right.
So it's an also.
It gives you an English 1 credit for freshman year.
I'm glad you pointed out, yeah, they're not doing LTW anymore.
Yeah.
They'll still, maybe need, or they'll still be utilizing the tools that they've learned from it. But this is what we use, and we literally just read it in class. It's elements of style. So some of it's kind of redundant. Some of it's enlightening, and it just sort of reaffirms things that they already know, or helps them to embellish a little bit more, increase their abilities to write. But yes, that's right. This is it. This is when they just use whatever they have learned without that writing curriculum at their side at their fingertips. So, unless you as a parent want to need to do something more.
The office of assertion was their source text in the online class, which was a parent resource in Challenge 1.
I think they have
And
it listed in the curriculum.
It's
too.
required for challenge 4.
For Challenge 4? Okay, yeah, they use that.
Yeah.
So I assume it's an additional cost to do the college.
Yes.
And then which college or whatever do they go?
Southeastern University out of Florida.
And
And
I've
it's
got a
regionally
kid at Liberty
accredited.
University, and he's majoring in history, and they took his 2 history classes as history, not even an elective.
Yeah.
So it's an accredited college.
Yes.
Friends have gone to
Regionally
Liberty
accredited.
University, other colleges, it's all been taken. So
Some of the
It's
stuff about
Can't
dual
do
Yeah,
enrollment
she
and
can't.
college credits gets covered at
Starting in Challenge
practicums. So I really encourage everyone to go to the practicums, because they just empower you as a parent and give you more confidence and more information and more explanation in detail. So but I don't know what page it is, but if you look at the table of contents in your catalog, there should be a place where it tells you where you can look at college credits. And also there's a page in here that gives you a sample of a transcript and how to make a transcript, which you can go online to CC Connected and do that as well. And there's all kinds of resources out there for that.
The link for the CC Plus link takes you to an SCP link, and you can look at like the syllabus. Like like you can look at all the information before you can pay that $500 and sign your kid up. It's
Yeah.
really
Oh,
helpful.
well,
And the syllabus has been the same, like the real one.
Well, if you're looking into that kind of stuff, I mean, I didn't graduate from classical conversations, but I did graduate from practical homeschooling. And we use CLEP tests,
Oh my gosh, I'm
which
so
were very helpful as well. So if you're already looking at college credits, CLEP testing is probably
Nope, I never.
CLEP testing is a
UNA.
test that you
Hey,
take
go $99.
at college, and
by their
you can
curriculum.
score. Certain colleges have
This
taken
is,
more
I mean, you're
score
basically
that
overlapping,
time.
so you're taking history, you're getting history credit, like
Yeah.
you're doing
Now
history,
you pay a
so
tuition,
it completely overlaps.
baseline tuition.
That's the part, and it is cheaper than doing some other stuff.
No curriculum change.
Well, if anyone has any questions, I'm gonna head back upstairs, but if you okay, cool. I love challenge 2, and I love watching kids catalog, and it's hilarious. It's a lot of fun.
Good job, Mary. All right. Well, for the sake of time and things, we should get going. And my role I'm Casey Groder. Nice to see all of you, familiar faces. And my role today is just to discuss the idea and scope and sequence behind Challenge 3, but also then segue into Challenge 4 on behalf of Deanna, who's not here today. And I know I've got a couple moms or dads coming in for that session at 11:45. So anyway, we'll kind of like go from one to the other. That's all right. And my session is kind of more off the cuff, just like the heartbeat of Challenge 3. Our theme for that year builds upon all the other themes that have been at play so far. And we move from choices to consequences. In Challenge 3, all choices bring consequences. And every week I write the date and our week number and the fact they're in Challenge 3 on the board, and I always write the theme on the board. I always write, all choices bring consequences, because we're learning that in our personal life and how the students manage their time to get their assignments done, to the research that goes into their science module, or even examining the choices that our characters make in Shakespeare, and also philosophy, because second semester we enjoy R.C. Sproul's book on the timeline of great philosophers, from the ancient philosophers to the most modern day philosophers, and they get to see the evolution of how humanity's choices have brought consequences. And good or bad, there's always a consequence. So it's been neat to watch the students grow and begin to realize some things personally about needing to get better at this, that, the other thing in order to feel ready to present it on Community Day. There's a neat shift that takes place between Challenge 2 and 3, where they start to taste it in Challenge 2, a little bit more opportunity to lead a conversation. They practice a lot of that in Challenge 2, but then now in Challenge 3, they're asked to come prepared to lead a strand or two, and it grows through the year. Like second semester, it ups the ante. So as a director, I have the opportunity to do my best to set them up for success, and have a backup plan if needed. But most of the time, when they've been assigned to lead a whole entire subject that day, they come prepared because they don't want to disappoint their fellow classmates. And it's just really great to be able to support that growth and give them feedback, positive feedback, and even like one or two things they can think about for the next time. But all choices bring consequences. And just page 40, you guys probably have seen the scope and sequence all morning. In general, the subjects are
poetry and Shakespeare for our exposition strand, and we do work with a book that gives us guidelines for poetry. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of more like that creative side for their brains, so they can dip into that in the middle of all the heavy stuff. And then Shakespeare, through the year, we go through 5 of his plays, and very specifically, I can see that CC has laid them out the way they have, so that we can examine histories, we can examine tragedies, we can examine comedies, and yet see, in the grand scheme of it all, how much our choices bring consequences. And so we have a lot of fun. Come on. We have a lot of fun just looking at that. And come on, how are you, John?
Good.
I'm just going over some of Challenge 3 right now, and then let's segue into 4. This is a strand that, exposition is a strand that the students get to lead. And so it's a lot of fun to invite them to come with a theme after the act that they've read and researched, or come to write on the board a comparison chart between 2 different characters and invite the class to give input. And often there's a lot of acting. I think that's the fun thing about Challenge 3 is that in practicums, you may have heard about the different growth phases in life. You know, this is like the poetic phase of life. They're moving from asking all these questions, that dialectic phase, to the rhetoric side, you know, so like straddling that still. They have a lot of questions still, but they want to act it all out. They want to be dramatic. And everything's drama when you're in Challenge 3 at that age, 16 years old. So we play into it, you know, because that's really where they are at naturally in their development and stuff. So yeah, we're kind of loud. There's only 5 students in my class, so we do poetry and Shakespeare. We're acting it out. So anyway, and it gets some kids who are more quiet out of the box. With grammar, we do, as you can see, CC does Latin through all the years. Introductions and foundations, all the way up to just really deep studying of the grammar of Latin and A, B, and 1. And then in Challenge 2, you've heard about that. But Challenge 3 is just a little bit more focused on Caesar and his leadership, hence the idea that all choices bring consequences. Keeps going. And then later in second semester, we look at a couple of Cicero's speeches, and we're analyzing some poetic devices, literary devices, even some values behind what he's saying. And so there's just a lot more conversation that happens when it comes to the Latin strand, and it can look different every year depending on how serious the students are about doing Latin exercises at home, or if they're doing a different language at home. So the flavor of Latin looks different for every class, but we've tried to keep the conversation going. We look at the Latin text, we look at the translations, we ask questions, and that's how we fill up our time this year with just a few people doing Latin at home. To get a full credit, we have chemistry, we use Apologia. Obviously, I didn't bring all my books because I said, see, the catalog has it all listed. You can see all the books there. I decided not to log them today. And we do work through it module by module, usually one module for every 2 weeks. And there are some at-home labs, but most of the time we're doing the labs in class. And I'm learning a lot after being just this first year as challenge director for 3, that I'll probably up the ante and get the microchem set so we can do like more exciting things in class.
Can I put a shameless plug?
Sure.
My sister is a chemist, and she does tutoring for CC kids because that was her chemistry through high school.
Yeah.
And got her through college. So if you need a chemistry tutor,
Nice.
Skype.
Super. Yeah. So that's really great. But in general, Apologia offers great audio. So you can listen to the text. You can there's lots of support for chemistry. And it's just a really good overview for the students. This year ourselves, we've taken a lot of time just to observe and examine the periodic table and learn things about it that we never knew before. Like, you think it's just like a chart on the board, but there's like so much about it, and we've been enjoying that discussion. Okay, a really big part of the strands in Challenge 3 is the American history, and we use a very large book, Patriot's Guide to American History. Over the 30 weeks, there's 22 chapters. They're working through them, reading on their own time. I highly encourage if they're taking notes, writing down definitions, all the things. But those are note-taking skills that they have to develop and have to be cultivated, even just parent to parent. So all of that's like on the parent-teacher, but in class, we're discussing certain topics. We always post a timeline of events, and that often draws to conversation about what's going on. We just finished the Civil War, and debate is a heavy strand for just reports and speeches. We have a Lincoln Douglas debate we just finished. It's like awesome. And then next semester we have a team policy debate. So we're, picking up from challenge 1 and 2. We're keeping it up so those skills can be curated and cultivated. And hopefully by challenge 3, they're comfortable with both types of debate if they've been in CC. And therefore, in challenge 3, because it's that poetic season, we're trying to hone skills. We're trying to help them express themselves, be persuasive. Like how they give the presentation is almost more important than the content of the presentation. Because at this point, they really should be good at like finding content, putting content together. They've got all their resources from essentials and onwards. Like that's the idea, right? Just like this snowball effect where in the guide you don't have to give the page number this and this, that, the other thing, because they should have built this like already. And so then you can just really encourage like their skills of presentation, and it all starts to come together. Anyway, our reasoning strand has 2 topics. First semester is music theory, and then second semester is philosophy, which I mentioned, Darcy Sproul. But back to music theory, it's a curated curriculum by CC, and it's a overview of music theory in a way that, like, I, who played piano for 8 years and clarinet for 12 years, had never seen before. it's like a deep dive or overview of music theory, but I actually really appreciate it because it causes you to wrestle with the concept. And again, I heard Amiri say it, it's all about language, right, and grammar, and like literacy. She said literacy, I like that because it literally has given a lot of the students more confidence to say, I picked that up in music, I understand what you mean now if you say time signature. I mean, it's literally grammar of music, but it goes deeper into how some of this works, and then they have to decide how much or how little they're going to wrestle with it, but we take time in class to go over the whole lesson, to do exercises, and I wait for the moment for the light bulb to go on, and it's so exciting when it does. But so we've had some aha moments in music theory this year, and anyway, now we're done. We'll go on to philosophy next, but I love that it's been put in reasoning, and it makes a lot of sense because just like analogies or just like logic, music theory is like that, the math of the brain, another way to tap into how to think differently, and yet it's a universal language, so how cool is that to have that skill put in there. And logic is our basic trend here of growing in math, and pre-calculus is typically at that 11th grade level. Of course, in the homeschool world, everyone has their different grade levels and math abilities and whatever, and I try to make it just a very comfortable place to be. And so on the math strand for challenge 3, they bring in a concept that they're working on, or a problem that they're working on, or a math concept they want to talk about. And so we'll use 5 common topics to discuss it. Let's define this, let's talk about that, how is this the same? But I'm not leading those strands. They split it between 2 students for this class this year, because there were 5 kids in everyone's gonna learn something, right? So it's been good. And there'll be a few random days where we'll play a game, but usually they're all assigned to bring.
Does CC usually recommend Saxon for that? Does Saxon do pre-calculus?
Yes, it's the advanced mathematics program. And again, with math, it's what CC recommends is there's a reason for it, and the guide's going to outline like what lessons to do, and so it kind of like becomes something you don't have to worry about. But a lot of us have to curate something different for our children, and that's okay. And also in class, like as a director, I could pull from the advanced mathematics and like have a conversation about a certain topic that is in line with the guide's pace. But for my class, I don't have to do that because we're just like someone's bringing in something algebra, someone's bringing in something geometry, someone's.
I failed pre-calculus in college. That's why I'm asking, because I'm like, I just need to know what the expectations are.
It's really helpful just to see like these are like standards of a like AP honors class student, you know. And so if there's something you're tailoring because there's a need to, like that's not a problem. They just have to have a standard, right, so that they can create a curriculum that is open to everyone. I'm just trying to think if I want to pull out anything in particular. Page 62 and 63 specifically talk about Challenge 3. And yes, the capstone event, if you will, as they mentioned, is Poetry Cafe. I enjoyed so much the first time we did Poetry Cafe, and we do it 3 times in the year, I believe, because of just they're working through the book and they're creating their own poetry as they go. And so our next cafe will be on like week 3 after break. But as much as Lincoln Douglas debate is like this huge, momentous experience, the Poetry Cafe is a really neat way to hear their inner thoughts and to hear like the students grow over the year in all of their perspectives, because like poetry allows them to have a creative outlet, right? And often they're going to write about something they're familiar with, or they've struggled with, or they've observed, and we just have had some fantastic poems that you're just like, you wrote that? Like, you need to publish that. Like, you know, so yeah, I can see why Poetry Cafe is the capstone event, because even greater than memorizing Shakespeare's lines or having a persuasive essay about whether or not Macbeth should have killed so and so. You know, it's just like all that stuff's good, but the Poetry Cafe, it's like just like unwrapping the present, you know, that your child is a gift to the world. So a neat opportunity for them in a like closed environment to celebrate their skills. Yes, so I just breezed through Challenge 3. Any questions on all of the materials that Challenge 3 would require are on page 114. Obviously, most of you have a few years before you get to Challenge 3, and that's okay. Well, I think what's good is just that we're just like a bird's eye view, you know, of why and how. A lot of, depending on where you started, there's a huge trend in graduating out of Challenge 3, just because sometimes kids come in at a different age and a different level, and depending on their credits, you know, Challenge 3 gives them a lot of credits, and maybe they're enough to be done, right? But there's a reason why Challenge 4 exists, and it ends up becoming a culmination of everything that they've had a chance to apply in all of the challenge levels, especially if like you've been a CCer for most of the time. Even just from A and up, you can see how they all build upon each other. And so the theme for Challenge 4 is understanding consequences defines leadership. And so, I mean, that's page 64. You can read all those words. I'm just speaking on it today since Mrs. Governor's not here. And also because I have a student who graduated out of 4, so at least as a parent I can talk about what it entails and what it's cultivating. understanding consequences defines leadership. So in their Challenge 3 year, typically the student has had a number of growth point experiences, has had to wrestle with a number of ideas, and even that worldview and the understanding how thought developed with the philosophy strand. I'm excited to get into it with my students, but every time I talk to a previous Challenge 3-year, they're like, philosophy is my favorite, because it gives them like something tangible to grab onto when they are like, yeah, that's how I see the world, or that's how someone else so-and-so sees. Like, you can start to you're not trying to put labels on things, right? But you need to name stuff. You're trying to attend to the world and what's going on around you, and you realize, well, that's a thought of Nietzsche, or that's a thought of so-and-so. You're just like, now I have a way to express myself. And so the kids love that, because they're in this age of wrestling with ideas, and wrestling with values, and wrestling with who they are, and expressing themselves. And so now you get to move into Challenge 4, understanding that there are consequences and how that plays out, and in fact, and it's going to actually influence your leadership. If you decide to do something like this, it's going to impact everyone else. Who'd have thought that my decisions would impact someone else, right? But that's really the overall theme for Challenge 4, is that my decisions will impact the world. And so that is why senior thesis is such a huge, right?
Yes. It was
a
really
huge
exciting
experience for the student, and whether your student's a procrastinator or someone who likes to plan it out. And the bottom line, like, senior thesis is a whole semester of work, and it begs them to wrestle with the idea that they've come up with to prove, and it begs them to spend time to look at all sides of it, and they're basically making a super essay, and then they get to defend it. And it was just, I sat there that day with the 7 students who were in Challenge 4 with my son, and I was as proud of all the others as I was of my son, because I was just like, they just like came out of their shell. Like, it was amazing. It was amazing. So it's a huge effort, and all the essential skills and all the law schools related skills, all the skills come out for something like that, but it's a joy. And senior thesis, I believe, can play into CC plus and all those extra credits that I can't speak to because I haven't had a chance to do that with any of my kids. But I guess if you're looking to get a head start on college, something.
I love the thesis, and Samuel's taking a gap year right now because he really wants to be a writer, and I'm like, oh. So he is taking a entrepreneur writing class right now, which is great. But the thesis, I loved seeing their personalities, and then you could see their future plans and like the direction they were going. I think it really helped them be able to work through that. It wasn't just a thesis paper, but it was like almost like you're like, wow, you see the end product, when they're presenting themselves and stuff.
Right.
And it was a wonderful thing to see each student and where they were going with those plans and stuff.
But senior thesis is something that kind of begins over Christmas break and culminates at the end of their challenge for senior year. But it's all, as a mom, I would suggest start thinking about it in October. Don't wait too long.
They're still doing the Old and New Testament survey,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is that
Yes. Yep, you're right. So I did jump just to senior thesis because that's an exciting thing. But like the rigmarole of the year itself is so rich. It's so rich. They're looking at world history through a different view, and it ends up being topical. Like, so first of all, I guess the biggest example I can think of is they're looking at world history with a book called The Discoverers, and the way the author writes, he writes like topically. So he's going to write about time, and then he's going to write about another subject. But then he like goes around the world and talks about what the Chinese thought about time, and how this, and then like this and that. So it's a little more abstract, right? So it's inviting like the students to come along for the journey, first of all, and follow that. But then you're also, it's not a textbook, so it's great. It's awesome. It allows the classical conversation to really like come out. That is the debate strand. Research is physics, and now a lot of students by that point can have decided whether or not they need that credit. And so the in-class strand is often just a lot of how physics is around us and interacts with us, and it's all going to be like conversation that's for all the students, regardless of their skill level in physics. So I'm not discrediting like to not do physics, but I just know as a fact, like I think in Nehemiah and Samuel's class there's like one person, two people doing physics out of the 7, right? So they had just a lot of physics conversations. And Mrs. Groder was awesome about the resource she used to bring that in. And then grammar is, they'll look at Virgil and they'll look at various translations, and I'm pretty sure they did a lot with the Psalms and looking at Psalms in Latin and parsing them out and just talking about original, like, and all of that. So that's a lot of conversation, some poetry as well. Looking at the Aeneid in ancient Latin was second semester. So that's all really neat to have a good Latin foundation. It encourages that really deep conversation in class. But logic, again, I'm pretty sure that looks different depending on the class, but pre-calculus or calculus is typically the focus for a senior in the baseline CC expectations. But again, I'm pretty sure even in Nehemiah's class they have like a 4-year range, like in terms of topics, and it never was a problem in community. So there is freedom to make sure that you're giving them what they need in order to be ready for the world, right? Without feeling like you're pushing them into this box of you have to do this, you have to do it. Reasoning is theology. Okay, I love how 3 develops the way they think about the world and their understanding of philosophy, and then it brings them to a point where they are their own person, of course, and it brings them to challenge 4, and they study theology. And so I just love that building block because there's just like it gets all the humanist stuff out of the way, and like they've got all those blocks put together, and then they can focus on God in their last year. And what a great experience to survey the Old Testament and the Psalms. And that's all just first semester. So they'll do just like this really cool overview. And first semester and second semester is about the New Testament. And so in 1 year, they're surveying the whole scripture and wrestling with a lot of really cool things. So I do appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I understand, well, with debate, they're not allowed to use the Bible.
That's
to
the
debate.
values, yes.
I've always gotten confused about that, and I know, like, we've been told that you don't let students using the Bible against each other in debate.
Sure.
So I understand that, but at the same time, and I understand not using scripture, but what if somebody could back up scripture using past experiences or and maybe this should be more of a one-on-one conversation.
That's okay.
But I've never understood that in the sense that I wonder if there's a way that we can set it up to where they can use God's word, because it tells us what is right and what's wrong, and using past like court systems that prove, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think you're touching on the fact that apologetics is one thing,
Yes.
and knowing how to defend your faith, that's one thing. But knowing how to support a value is another thing, especially in politics. And that's kind of like what we just wrestled with upstairs this semester with preparing for Lincoln Douglas debate. It's all modeled after Lincoln and Douglas in their debates, and what presidential debate should look like. But it's all based on a value and that criterion. They just, especially in a debate for American government, is that anything that you draw on should be based on the past in your government's history. So the quotes of founding fathers and all of those things are actually more dependable in a debate like that than scripture, because not everyone can agree that scripture is true.
Right. Well,
So, but for CCers
for
and what you're saying,
right.
it's like they could use some apologetic
Right.
training, but
Like a side
Yeah.
dish of it that where scripture can back up just to
Yeah.
show that to know God and make him known and his word is true.
So I have two thoughts on that. My mom works for the Speaker in the House, who is trained as a constitutional attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and he's defended things like marriage, and things like that at a constitutional federal level. So if you want to look at that, constitutional debate would be where you would want to look.
Okay.
Because a lot of that, it's based on the premise that we were founded on certain values.
Right.
They're written
Right.
already down.
I think Kirk
And
mentioned
as
that.
founding documents, that's where that value comes from.
Right.
So that's the level that you start at with
Right.
debate, is you would start at the founding document level.
Right.
Because that would be the ultimate authority for our court cases, whereas we as Christians understand that that's not the ultimate value. The ultimate value actually comes from Christ,
Right.
but it's founded on that.
Right.
Makes
I wish that there was scripture that backed it up. You know what I mean? For
and
CCC.
that's my first thought. My second thought is look into the Truth Project.
Right.
Because my husband and I lead a Bible study every year pretty much through the Truth Project, and that is excellent because it takes subject by subject and says, what do we understand as Christians, and applies it in an apologetic way.
Right.
Takes scripture and says, if this is the final word of God, how do we understand this whole subject?
Mm-hmm.
And it does subject by subject through 15, 12 weeks in Lane Cotter.
it's an excellent program.
So that would be my second thought.
Not to add more, because I know there's
Oh yeah,
much
you asked a
to-
good question.
That's great.
It's challenging for the students to put the Bible aside when it comes to those debates too, which cultivates another skill, of pulling back from what Challenge 1 brought forth and all the American documents that they were asked to study,
Right.
At least now they know where to look for these things. And most of our American documents at the beginning all reflect scripture.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like we don't even need to quote scripture if you find the right quote,
Right.
So
Right.
it's a good
And our
skill.
students we're not wanting to set up the negative to have to defend against scripture. And that's another important aspect, that we don't want to put the other student on the other side of the argument, because it might be that your student gets the affirmative, but if you get the negative and your person you're debating against is leaning heavily on scripture, they're not going to want to disagree with that. We don't want to stick them in that box. So there's ways that they can create opinions about thoughts or things that have happened in the past and argue, because the whole point of this skill is for them to learn how to create solid arguments with good support. And at home, you should be talking about the values and what does the Bible say and all of that, because it is all part of everything that we're doing as Christians at home. But
And if it's truth, it can be
Yeah,
found in other ways, and we support that the Bible is is the ultimate truth,
Right.
right? Well, God's truth can be discovered in different ways.
Right. So like
We don't need the Bible necessarily to know God's truth if we have an understanding already of what it says,
Right.
because we can see it explained.
Like
in
one
different ways.
example that I have, because I mean,
It's little.
I do try to pull scripture in with both sides, and actually with the death penalty, I can use scripture on the affirmative and the negative, because God did not make man to make. He's not the giver and taker of life. That's not how we were created, and yet it's our government's responsibility to be able to. Sorry.
Rabbit trail.
Can I
Sorry.
ask-
Yeah, it is everything. Sorry.
Can I ask
So.
an overall question? Like
anyways.
someone who's like way down here.
Sorry.
Yes.
So you were saying that there's at least a good proportion of students that complete Challenge 3, but that don't go on to Challenge 4 for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Yes.
So my question is, maybe some are taking a gap year, or maybe they go to college early. I guess I was just, what does that look like? What have a lot of the students done?
Well, and it's not from my personal experience. My son went to Challenge 4.
Okay.
Right. But it was also our decision that he did it because he was older. He didn't have to, and he had enough credits that 4
All the kids
offers.
have all the credits
Yes.
when you get to 4.
Yeah,
It's front end heavy for
it
that.
is front end heavy.
Yeah,
It's
it's challenged for
credits.
that reason.
Yeah.
It's because they have jobs,
Yeah.
and you want them to think. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're
Okay,
a mom.
so you
You've
want.
got to graduate.
Yeah, I've graduated. I have my second child in 4. 4 is written the way it is because they do have more full-time jobs at this level, the age. There's a lot more responsibilities that they have as in life in general, but it's written in such a way that they have time to finally contemplate all these years of study and culminate, what do I believe? Why do I believe it? How do I believe it? Can I support it fully? The thesis takes them through that. And so it's always funny to me that kids will get to the end of 3-year parents and say, oh, my transcript's full, I don't need it. But we haven't really given them time to contemplate because it is so front end heavy. And it's because Cece's trying to help us balance their life, that they don't have to stick in so many hours of sitting down reading books, right, or writing papers. It's, you want them to have time to think. And so all the kids could graduate out of 3 essentially if they've done, 80% or better of the work. But the point of 4 is it gives them space to work and process.
Yes, I mean, testimony, like the hair off your testimony is that what I saw occur for my son through the beginning, from the beginning of 4 to the end, was all I could think of was blossom, like a blossom. And like everything that we poured into him had time to marinate and just like grow. And it was just so cool.
It's a maturation
It
process.
was so cool. And there's still ancient literature. I mean, they're reading the Greeks, the myths. They get to talk about the gods. They get to have they still get to enjoy this creative stuff. And wrestle with the idea of human nature through the Greek gods, and then you contrast that to the study of theology that they're doing at the same time, and so you've got Greek gods, you've got God, you've got, Virgil over here in Latin, and then, physics, how the world works, discussions on that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all just circulating and bubbling, and world history too. So you're just around the world 100 times because of the way this author does his book. So it's a level that I think is extremely worthwhile, and it does, in a sense, set up your child to walk into the next season of life more confident of who they are in the Lord.
Why they're choosing college, if they choose college.
Yes, why they're not rushing
The
as a
manner of
16
college.
or 17-year-old out of 3 into college.
Yeah.
It gives them time to think and ask the questions like, well, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And the senior thesis often does draw that out because my son chose to talk about decentralization in the space industry. He loves this topic and all the things, and it was really cool to see his thesis come to the end and be able to defend that. And it was within that 2 weeks that towards the end when he decided what he wanted to do in the next year, and he's doing aerospace manufacturing because he didn't want to go be an engineer, just think about stuff all the time. He wanted to be hands-on. He wants to learn how to do this stuff, And then he's like, and then someday if they want to pay for me to go think about the stuff, I'll do it. I was like, well, your math, your math is good enough to go think about this stuff now, but I'm really glad to see you wanting to use, go into a trade. So it's cool.
So I guess my question is there some statistics somewhere or something that someone's written down, how many, people are, getting jobs and doing this, or just getting jobs, or doing an internship, or going to college?
I don't have any statistics for you. I do just have a lot of what I've seen.
Okay.
Robert Gordon's publishes that stuff.
I was pushed out of the house. My siblings were pushed out of the house pretty early, 17. Out you go. I wish that someone had given me this year. I wish I had this year because I would have made choices differently in my first year of college. I ended up having a great life, but it was purely grace of God and accident. You know what I mean? It wasn't intentional. I wish somebody had done this for me.
Yeah. And then you just mentioned Robert Borton.
Yeah.
He puts out a lot of statistical research. Robert. He's
He's the CEO of Classical Conversations, and there's a Challenge 4 Facebook group that graduates and alumni can be a part of, and I'm sure he's publishing stuff on there. I'm on it, but I haven't seen stuff come across. But that's his heart, is they do a survey for all the grads, and they collect all that information. It does get published each year to show this is where our grads are going. They have a number of grads that come back and report on what they've done and accomplished and what's happening in the world. They're doing a lot of publications on their blog and whatnot to show this is what our students are doing with their lives as a result of what they've been able to develop in their worldview and the skills that we've given them.
I'm curious to see how. I mean, I laughed about it because it's been crazy since COVID. Like, I had a kid that wanted to go to West Point and all that, and ever since all the craziness, he's like, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing it. And now I feel lost as far as like navigating through the waters, because we were like, his dad went to West Point, his grandpa went to West Point, his uncle went to West Point, and now we're like, you know, it's kind of like where are we? So I wonder how that's going to impact kids' decisions, you know, now, because that was what
consumers are going to be the one who drives what happens with education over the next 10 years. And if we just throw our kids to the current system and not ask for something better, we're not going to get anything different but brainwash kids, indoctrinate kids with the wrong worldview. They're still very valuable at 18 to 25, and if we're sending them off to colleges that don't have our biblical worldview, don't be surprised, because their goal is to change what you did in 12 years and forward.
Side note, there's a great program that you can go through. It's 2 weeks long called Summit Ministries, and they meet in different places. There used to be one at Bryan College, I don't know if they're now, but it is intensive as far as bringing in people from our current culture to talk about keeping your biblical worldview in college, and you know preparing you for what you're going to encounter in college, and then internalizing it and making the decision: are you going to continue in your faith or not? It kind of brings it to a culmination. Also, it's a great place to meet your spouse.
I didn't meet my spouse there, but I had a semester-long program that was the same thing, and it was really, really, really good. Really intimidating first class, because he basically walked in and said God doesn't exist, and then they debated from there. He didn't actually. But it was really good.
Yeah, and I mean the overarching foundational theme here for CC is to know God and make Him known. And the curriculum overall, over all the levels, is inviting you and your student to wrestle through that idea that He is there, He's meant to be known, and then to be made known. So it's just an awesome program that we, as a family, are very grateful to have come into, but it's going to be, for the upper level student especially, it's going to end up being for them as much as they put into it, you know. And I do see a struggle in a lot of the upper levels where some of them are working too much and forgetting that they are actually students first and workers second. And you can tell very quickly who's like got a lopsided load. And so you just pray that they see their choices and the consequences, you know.
So, question: are you talking about the tutor's perspective on that, or the parent's perspective on that?
Just I'm speaking as a director in terms of like watching some threes.
Do you
fours.
let the parent know?
We have conversations. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know everybody's different.
But like a lot of it too has to do with the fact that community day is just one day out of 7.
Yes.
You know, I am here to support parents, support the student, but I can't homeschool the child.
Right.
You know.
Well, with mine, we have 7 kids, and by the time Samuel got into Challenge 4, I'm like, you're an adult. But CC is a privilege, and you know, so I wasn't able to keep up with everything. that he's doing other than the big things like the thesis or whatnot. So you do get to see the other ones. But so I just always appreciate feedback because I have blind spots and I'm not,
Yeah, we all
I'm
do.
not omnipresent.
Yeah. But it's just being careful as a parent to
Yes.
be like, okay, what is the goal for my student this year and how am I going to set them up for success? Because we do at least give them that platform that they can launch from, as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. There's a lot more you have to trust them with, right? But then there's places you have to pull back and be like, all right, we need to fix this. And then I'm going to launch you again. Because you're running, this whole program is giving them roots, right?
Yes.
But then so that they can fly. I know
Yes.
that doesn't make a lot of sense, but you got to give them roots so that they can fly. So, yeah.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You're welcome.